Chapter 2476. The woman pursed her lips to hide the mockery and amusement in her eyes. She pulled the young Miss's hand and walked toward the main courtyard. Pushing open the main courtyard's doors, Concubine sure pulled the young Miss inside and called out with a smile. Lord! Lord is overjoyed, Lord. Our family's Miss has returned. Along the way, all the servants used curious gazes to size up this slightly tanned young Miss, who clearly looked like a country bumpkin, and secretly inquired about her identity. Concubine sure cheerfully pulled the young Miss's hand into the main hall. When she saw Mu Qingya sitting beside Mu Jingfeng and leisurely looking up at her, the smile on her face involuntarily stiffened. Mu Jingfeng's eyebrows reached his temples, and his eyes were cold. Dressed in a cyan robe, his figure was tall and straight, and his appearance was young and handsome. It was impossible to tell that he was a middle-aged man. Mu Xingchen's appearance was 50 to 60% similar to his father's. Concubine sure tugged at the dazed young Miss and hurriedly said, What are you spacing out for? Jojo, quickly greet father. Wait. Mu Qingya spoke coldly and raised her hand. Concubine sure. I remember Xingchen telling me that his younger sister looks like she's 15 years old and is very beautiful. That young Miss's face abruptly stiffened, and her hands, which had shrunk into her sleeves, clenched tightly, unable to suppress the faint trembling. Moreover, didn't you leave the matter of finding the young Miss to Xingchen? Where did you bring her back from? Mu Qingya glanced at the woman mockingly and turned to say to Mu Jingfeng, Lord, this matter is of great importance. We still have to investigate it properly. Mu Jingfeng coldly looked at the young woman standing below, who looked like a cowardly quail. His brows suddenly furrowed. Sister, what do you mean by that? Eldest young master is concerned about his younger sister. But don't tell me I'm not concerned about our Mu family's young Miss who has been stranded outside? I'm being kind by bringing the young Miss back from a lower star domain like Seacone planet. Don't wrongly accuse me. Mu Qingya heavily placed the teacup on the side table. Sure, Huixin, watch your words. Do I, as the madam of the household, need to wrongly accuse you, a concubine? Concubine sure secretly pursed her lips and forcefully tugged at the young Miss in her hands. The young lady hurriedly knelt down and said timidly, Greetings, father, mother. Concubine sure covered her mouth and laughed. I have evidence here. Bring him in. Soon after, a man and a woman were pushed into the hall. They stood in the middle of the hall and hurriedly knelt down. The old woman, who looked to be in her 50s, shouted at the top of her lungs, Master Mu, Madam Mu. I can prove it, this boy, that he's screaming Arbor. I am her adoptive father's aunt. My surname is Li. The old woman chuckled and tugged at the thin and tall man beside her. This is my son Ah Kong. We are very familiar with her adoptive father's family. We all lived together in Quoto village on Seacone planet for many years, haha. The old woman's lips curled as she hurriedly said, Master Mu, Madam Mu, Jojo is very good. Haha, their whole family is very good. Mu Qingya frowned and turned to say to Mu Jingfeng, Xingchen, this child told me not long ago that her younger sister came to the Divine Continent, which means that our young Miss came to the Divine Continent by herself. But Concubine sure picked someone up from Seacone planet now? I'm afraid you picked her up wrongly. Chapter 2477. When Concubine sure heard this, she rebutted indignantly, Sister, I don't like what you're saying. Although eldest young master's cultivation is high, it doesn't mean that he's accurate in judging people. Does he have evidence to prove that the young lady he met in China is the one from our Mu family who was stranded outside? You casually found two people here, and that's proof? Mu Qingya said indifferently, You're the one with a bad brain, yet you want to think that other people's brains are bad as well. Husband. Concubine sure immediately pouted, looking like she was complaining to the heavens and earth, but daring not to complain to her mistress. She pulled out a handkerchief from under her sleeve to wipe her eyes and sobbed. This concubine worked hard and inquired from many sources for the sake of this family. It wasn't easy for this concubine to bring our young lady back. Yet madam is still making things up for me like this. Enough. Mu Jingfeng, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly spoke. He stood up and coldly said, Deal with this matter as you see fit. There's no need to tell me too much about these inner residence matters. Mu Jingfeng strode out of the hall, not even sparing a glance at the young lady kneeling on the ground from the corner of his eye. The old woman kneeling behind the young lady secretly pursed her lips and sneakily looked up to exchange glances with her son beside her. Concubine sure chuckled and looked up at Mu Qingya provocatively. Madam then, since husband has spoken, please arrange a courtyard for the young lady to stay in. It turned out that in husband's heart, this daughter who had been stranded outside wasn't that important. A mocking glint flitted across Shi Huixin's eyes. Mu Qingya coldly glanced at her, her gaze landing on the cowering young lady kneeling on the ground. What's your name? Xiao. Xiao Jojo. She's called Mu Xiao. Shi Huixin answered with a chuckle. Madam, you can just call her Jojo. Half an hour later, the old woman pulled her son and returned to the small courtyard that Madame Mu had temporarily arranged for them with the young lady. Although it looked like a very ordinary small courtyard, the layout of the courtyard and the room, the silks, satins, and embroidery simply dazzled the three. The three of them had never lived in such a nice courtyard in their entire lives. They hurriedly entered the room together. The old woman immediately cried out excitedly, Chun Songer, this time, the three of us will have a good life. Mother, you're taking too much of a risk. If you ask me to pretend to be someone from Arbor, and they find out, they'll kill us like we're ants. We won't even be able to reason with them. As soon as her son shouted, his mouth was covered by the old woman. What are you yelling about? The old woman sneakily hid behind the door to take a look. Fortunately, there were no servants in the garden. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief and hit her son's arm hard. This is related to your sister's future happiness. I'm telling you, you better watch your mouth and don't go around talking nonsense. Ingchun, don't be afraid. This matter, I think. The old woman's small eyes flashed. Moreover, we didn't come here on our own accord. It was that concubine sure who brought you back. Even if there's a problem, it's their own fault. What does it have to do with us? Xiao Ingchun nervously pinched her handkerchief, her heart uneasy as she said. But that sixth sister today, that Mu Royun, said the moment she saw me, she said that I was acting old. Chapter 2478. She was 21 years old now, so it was impossible for her to pretend to be a 15-year-old girl. Moreover, she had been hiding on Sikong planet all these years, living the life of a beggar in the open, so her skin naturally couldn't be as supple as a young girl's. Ingchun, don't be afraid. Mother is here for everything. Madame Neneli put her hands on her hips and puffed out her chest. Just stay here with peace of mind. To outsiders, just say that I'm your aunt. Your younger brother is your younger cousin. The three of us will stay here for a while first. Mother, I heard that the people here are all cultivating. What kind of cultivation have they cultivated to? Spiritualists, right? That seems to be the case. Look at your younger brother. He's only a level 3 mystic cultivator now. Then if your younger brother has the support of such a large family clan's cultivation resources, then his realm will definitely rise. Madame Nelly had a good plan, and her shrewd eyes were filled with yearning for a happy life. Mother, we won't be exposed, right? Xiao Ingchun actually didn't have much confidence herself. How could that be? We just have to insist that you're Arbor. Who here has seen her before, so how could they expose you? Xiao Tsong had used some brains at this time, especially since he didn't get a good ending every time he went against Arbor. He kept feeling uneasy and felt a bit apprehensive at the mention of Arbor. Mother, can you not be so naive? What kind of identity does Arbor have? Is it so easy to impersonate the crown princess of Mo Kingdom? What's wrong with the crown princess? Madame Nelly put her hands on her hips and revealed a shrewish look. She's already living so well, so she can just stay in her palace and be the crown princess. No one will fight with her for anything. Song, or why are you so timid now? If your older sister gets the benefits, will you not get a share? Besides, that Arbor is still in the Mo Kingdom's palace on Sikong planet right now. Don't worry, she's living like a princess. This was the divine land. Who would know that she was the crown princess? We're all relatives. What's wrong with letting your sister use her identity and live a good life? It's not like she'll lose anything. After hearing Madame Neyli's fallacious reasoning, Xiao Yingchun felt more confident. She nodded and said, "That's true. This place is thousands of kilometers away from Seacombe Planet. If no one brought her here, she wouldn't be able to come over." "Oh, isn't that so?" Ever since the mother and her children failed to rob rice on the street and were sent to prison for causing trouble, they had been living in seclusion ever since. Miss Chiao had long forgotten about these 3 flies. Later on, these 3 people were exiled from the Mo Kingdom capital to work in the mines. By chance, they escaped and fled back to Quoto village in a sorry state. When Shi Huixin found the 3 of them, they were already on the verge of death from starvation. How could Xiao Yingchun not firmly grasp this opportunity to eat well and live well, achieve meteoric success, and leave the hell on earth like Seacombe Planet for the divine land? No matter what, she was also surnamed Xiao and was family with Arbor. Since her sister wasn't coming to the divine land, it wasn't a big deal for her to take her place as a relative, right? Mom was right. She was Arbor's crown princess. Every day, she was dressed in luxurious clothes and feasted on delicacies. Her days were so comfortable. So what was wrong with helping out a poor relative? From now on, she was the Mu family's precious young miss. Her days would definitely be better and better. Chapter 2479. Bam! Concubine sure looked up at her daughter who rushed in and said with a frown, "Yin, you're really becoming more and more rude. Mother, you clearly know that woman is a fake. Why did you bring her back? I feel disgusted just looking at her. She has an ugly and dark face. She's already so old, yet she's still pretending to be young. I won't call this kind of petty country bumpkin my older sister." Mu Royan said angrily. "You child." Shi Huixin swept her a helpless glance and beckoned her over. "Come sit next to Mother." "Mother." Mu Royan squeezed to her side and leaned into Shi Huixin's arms, pouting. Shi Huixin poked her younger daughter's forehead lovingly. "Yin, do you think Mother is really stupid? Since we know that girl will come back sooner or later, why don't we happily welcome her back? It's easier to control her if we find a stupid one." Mu Royan looked at concubine Shi in slight surprise. "Mother, you mean? That real Arbor is much more powerful than this fake one? More powerful. This idiot from a small family can't compare at all." Shi Huixin humphed. "Let's find something that can't be shown in public and have it in our hands. It's much better than that girl really coming back to cause trouble. But Madam will be the first to find fault with this matter. A fake will always be a fake. Someone will expose it one day." Humph. Shi Huixin pursed her lips. That kind of woman is used to being a good person in front of eldest young master. She doesn't even find it tiring. I don't believe that she doesn't have any selfish motives. So what if it's exposed? By then, Arbor's reputation will already be tarnished. Shi Huixin waved her hand carelessly. She didn't tell her daughter many things. After all, her younger daughter couldn't keep secrets. For example, when she found out about Arbor's crown princess identity, she was actually very shocked. She definitely didn't expect that this daughter of the Mu family, who had wandered outside, would actually coincidentally marry His Highness the Crown Prince of the Divine Continent on Seacombe Planet. That wasn't a small Mo Kingdom's Crown Prince. That was His Highness the Crown Prince of the Great Divine Continent. But so what? The Great Emperor would definitely not acknowledge this marriage. When the time came, the Crown Prince would definitely find another good partner. As for her daughter Arbor, a trace of disgust and coldness flashed through concubine Shi's eyes. She should be in the dust and be trampled on by others. Her daughter should be coquettishly pampered. All the glory of the Mu residence should belong to her daughter. There was no need for an outsider to exist in this world. Qin Estate, the opposite shore of the lake. When Qin Xian ascended Panyu Pavilion, he took off the cloak on his body and handed it over to the manservant following behind him. "Little brother Xian, what are you busy with? I haven't seen you for a while." Omega Kotoku raised his head and looked at his smiling big brother. He asked expressionlessly, "Big brother, why are you here?" "Yeah, I'm bored." Eldest young Sir Qin sat down in front of him with a grin and didn't stand on ceremony. He directly reached out to take the teapot from the table and poured himself a cup of piping hot tea. I heard that you arranged for fifth brother to go to Weishi Langfang to relax? That's right. Eldest young Sir Qin smiled and nodded. I saw that he was cooped up at home and had nothing to do recently, so I let him go out for a walk. Second young sir, second young sir. A man dressed in yellow hastily ascended the pavilion, as if he were flying. Chapter 2480. When he turned and discovered that eldest young Sir Qin was also present, he involuntarily paused. Yo, isn't this Wang Cheng? Why are you suddenly not speaking after seeing this young sir? You can't even let me know about this? Do you want me to leave now? Eldest young Sir Qin asked with a grin as he fanned himself with a teacup in one hand. Speak. Omega Kotoku replied dryly with downcast eyes. Yes. Wang Cheng glanced at eldest young sir, inwardly musing that this eldest young sir was still so insensible. After some hesitation, Wang Cheng still said, this subordinate heard that the Mu family brought back a young lady that they had lost contact with outside last night. Ha! What does the Mu family finding a daughter have to do with us? Upon hearing this, eldest young Master Qin immediately waved his fan, showing a disinterested expression. It has a lot to do with us. Wang Cheng suddenly raised his voice, his eyes brimming with the light of gossip. Eldest young sir, do you know that young lady's name? Her name is Arbor, but after entering the Mu family, she changed her name to Mu Qiao. She was also brought over from Seacombe planet. She also came from that small place, Quoto village. Puffed. Eldest young sir choked on his tea and started coughing violently. Qin Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and her gaze also landed on Wang Cheng. His handsome face was expressionless, but his eyes appeared especially sharp. What did you say? Could it be that he had heard wrongly just now? Wang Cheng knew that his young sir would have such a reaction. He had always felt that his young sir would become somewhat abnormal when it came to that young lady from the Qiao family. Wang Cheng's mouth twitched as he said, That is that young lady from the Qiao family. I heard that she was brought back to the Mu family. Yes, she is the Mu family's long-lost daughter. Hehe, young sir, this is quite dramatic, isn't it? She was brought back just like that. Eldest young Sir Omega Kotoku and eldest young Sir Qin asked in unison. That's right. Wang Cheng looked at the two young masters with a puzzled expression. He blinked his small eyes and asked, Is there a problem? The two brothers looked at each other and saw some doubts in each other's eyes. The biggest problem was that he didn't make a splash or create a ruckus. This was not Jojo's style at all. Since when had Jojo been so obedient? She was going to follow someone else back, just because they wanted to pick her up? It didn't look like it. Haha. Eldest young Master Qin didn't know why he was laughing so strangely. He put away his fan and slowly poured himself another cup of tea, as if the guy who had lost control and almost spat out the tea was not the elegant and calm him at this moment. When did you go back? Why wasn't there any news before? Prince Omega Kotoku asked coldly. Just last night. It was already dark. Then the Mu family silently took her back. He left through the back door without alerting anyone. However, the other families in the imperial capital should have received the news by now. Back door? The two young masters exclaimed in disbelief in unison. Wang Cheng. What was wrong with the back door? Was it so unbelievable? Impossible. Eldest young Sir Qin shook his head and snorted while waving the fan in his hand. It can't be Jojo. The young lady wasn't one to be taken advantage of. Not to mention the back door. Even if it was the main door, there would probably be a guard of honor to welcome her back. Chapter 2481. Interesting. The eldest young sir clapped and chuckled. Who exactly is it that dares to impersonate my family's little miss? I'll definitely go over and take a look later. Young Master Omega Kotoku swept a disdainful glance at his eldest brother. Haha, when did she become your family's little miss? In that case, perhaps the little miss has already gone to the divine province. Eldest young Master Qin narrowed his eyes and sent the second young sir a frivolous look. Speaking of which, second brother, I've always wanted to ask you something. Back then, your clone was destroyed and you ran back with your tail between your legs. This matter has something to do with my family's little miss, right? How do you plan to deal with father? That old man won't take things lying down. You know that if the little miss comes, the old man probably has a way to sense her. I'll take care of it, young Master Omega Kotoka said solemnly. TSK. Eldest young Master Chin stood up with a chuckle with a flick of his sleeve. Since you know what to do, then it's fine. I'll go over and take a look right now. Just which audacious bitch dares to impersonate my family's little miss? This matter will definitely be very interesting. Omega Kotoku. Since when did she belong to your family? You'll be beaten to death sooner or later if you say it so smoothly. After exiting the Chin estate, eldest young Master Chin was all smiles as he headed in the direction of the Mu estate. The eldest young sir searched the Mu estate's rear courtyard and finally found that Miss Mu Chiao, who had just returned home in a small, rundown courtyard in a remote corner. This simply made one speechless. The eldest young sir looked up at the courtyard of that small residence, then at the style of the upstart in the courtyard, and his lips involuntarily twitched. If his little miss knew that the Mu family was mocking her like this, her enmity and hatred would probably escalate. Shaking his head, eldest young Master Chin entered the courtyard with a TSK. Xiaoing Chun just happened to walk out and saw a handsome man dressed in white fluttering in the middle of the courtyard at a glance. She nearly fell head over heels for him. Her little heart pounded, and her face flushed red. She stammered, You are? Could this be one of the Mu family's young masters? This is too handsome. Xiaoing Chun's heart raced wildly, and her maiden heart thumped loudly. She actually subconsciously took a few steps forward. Eldest young Sir Chin chuckled, and suddenly charged towards Xiaoing Chun like a beam of white light. Xiaoing Chun was overjoyed, thinking that this handsome young master was also interested in her. Just as she twisted her body and took a few quick steps forward, she was caught off guard and felt herself being swept away by a gust of cold wind. With a bang, she crashed into the side room at the back. Bang! 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 Bang bang bang! The sound of a beating that made one's hair stand on end could be heard, accompanied by the woman's whimpering cries that shrank in her throat. This sound continued for almost an hour, before it finally ended with a short and sharp gasp from the woman. Alas! Eldest young Sir Chin walked out of the side room and patted away the non-existent dust on his sleeves as he muttered to himself, Why can't I control myself? How dare he impersonate Jojo with such an appearance? That when the Chin estate's hidden guards passed this news to the young master of Omega Kotoku in Crane Garden, the young master paused for a moment. Second young master's hand that was holding the brush paused for a moment. He looked at a black dot under the brush and silently changed to a blank piece of paper for himself. Bang! In the Mu estate's Wupu garden, Shi Huixin smashed the teacup next to her with an ashen face. Chapter 2482. What an idiot! Shi Huixin cursed. She had originally planned to bring that woman, who was unpresentable, to walk around the banquet hosted by Madame Goen today. She wanted to let this Mu estate's legitimate miss show her face in front of all the noble ladies. In the future, even if the real Arbor wanted to return home, his reputation would have been more or less ruined by this fake idiot. Who would have thought that there would be news that this idiot would be beaten black and blue by someone in the garden by himself, until he was on the verge of death? Bodyguard Lu, go investigate. Go and find out what's going on. Shi Huixin's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that there was someone secretly hiding in their Mu family, and had seen everything that she had done? She wasn't afraid of others finding out the truth. In any case, she just needed to say that she was deceived by Xiaoing Chun and her daughter. She was just dissatisfied that there was actually someone in this household who was secretly fighting for justice for that little bastard Arbor. Nanny Zhu. Shi Huixin turned to look at an old blue and white maid standing behind her and coldly said, Could it be that the injuries are all on the face? When will it recover? If she insisted on bringing such a disgraceful thing out, Madame would be the first to reject it. Moreover, her motive was too obvious. Nanny Zhu was an old nanny she brought from her maternal home, so she was naturally loyal and could understand her young miss's intentions. When she heard this, she couldn't help but spit and say, That bitch, who knows if she fell on her own or not? But she still falsely claimed that she was beaten. The injuries are all on the face. The corner of her mouth is broken, and her eyes are swollen like a pig's head. In this servant's opinion, even if she used a beautifying pill and a healing pill, she'll need at least half a month to recover. How unlucky! Sure, Huixin felt that her entire plan had been disrupted, and she slapped the stool heavily. The next day, Miss Chiao once again collected a shoal of fish. This time, the onlookers at Wei Shijiang didn't have anything to say. In any case, they were already used to it. Who asked her to have a storage talisman? They also wanted to collect a few fish, but their inner worlds couldn't store living things. Besides, the inner world was only a few cubic meters big, and it was used to store rare treasures. How could it be used to store fish? Side comparisons are odious. He returned to Fish Orchid Planet and released the school of fish into the Orchid Sea. Looking at these jubilant fish swimming in the sea, they flicked their tails and jumped up, creating a series of sparkling and translucent water droplets. Arbor's eyes flickered. Emolien slowly walked up to her and held her hand. She asked softly, "Jojo, are you still going to watch the competition today?" Actually, he hoped that she would go. He hoped that she would completely forget about yesterday's unhappy matter and smile again. The little girl turned her head and looked up at him. It was as if she could feel his feelings. Her heart seemed to be touched by something. It was so soft that it was indescribable. She suddenly nodded her little head and gave him a definite answer. At that moment, Emolien's eyes curved into crescents as she smiled. Clang! The gongs and drums sounded again. The onlookers in the corridor cheered violently. More than 10 pill refiners rushed forward and stuffed buns with elixirs into the mouths of the 30 pitiful patients. "Are you feeling better? Are you feeling better, brother? Brother, can you see how many buns this is?" One of them stretched out a finger and waved it in front of the patient. Bam! Chapter 2483. Holy shit, he's down. Doctor, where's the doctor? Come and take a look. Take a look. Amidst the chaos, 2 doctors immediately came forward to check on him. They immediately fed the patient a vomit-inducing liquid and helped him to the side to vomit. Arbor. Emolien had been paying attention to his wifey's expression ever since they entered Langfang. Now that he saw the corners of his wifey's mouth twitch, he knew that the little fellow's mood was starting to improve. Since last night, this little thing had been listless. She ate very slowly, and when she spoke, she would only reply with 2 or 3 words when you asked her 7 or 8 questions. Her listless appearance made one's heart ache. Now that her mood had improved, the Crown Prince deliberately teased her. He squeezed her hand and asked, "Jojo, what kind of poison are these people suffering from?" Ordinary poisons can be cured by refining an antidote pill, but their symptoms don't look the same, Emolien continued. Miss Chiao nodded. With a flick of her finger, a small porcelain bottle landed in her palm. Jojo's exclusive antidote pill can cure more than 200 ordinary poisons. Jojo, when did you refine this antidote pill? I cooked it in a small stew pot in the early stages. Miss Chiao frowned. It's too ordinary. Emolien, pretend he didn't ask. He reckoned that this little guy was born to deal a blow to people. The 2 of them whispered in low voices, but it still attracted the sidelong glances of the pill refiners around them. When they heard the little girl's words, they glared at her with indignant eyes. What kind of joke was this? Using a small stew pot to refine pills? Did she think they were idiots who could be fooled by a few words? Oh no, this young fellow seems to be dying. Isn't this poison too strong? You brat, what kind of bun did you stuff into his mouth? It's wrapped in poison. A middle-aged man furiously pushed the young pill refiner in front of him. No, it's the antidote. I gave him the antidote. Impossible. Even if it can't cure the poison in his body, it can't make his condition worse. Fuck, do you know how to detoxify? Doctor, give me some vomit-inducing liquid. Arbor frowned slightly and turned to look at an alchemist standing beside him. Where did these patients come from? Of course I registered myself. The alchemist thought of the arrogant words the little girl had said before and didn't want to bother with her. But after thinking about it, he said, "There's also a reward for signing up to take the poison. After the event, everyone will get 1,000 spirit coins. They are all from poor families. 1,000 spirit coins is enough for them to live for more than half a month. It's over, quickly suppress him, a doctor shouted. Several pairs of hands pressed down on the twitching man on the ground. Looking at the man's expression, it was obvious that he was exhaling more than he was inhaling. He was already on the verge of death. Arbor couldn't help but frown as he handed the bottle to Fong Su behind him. Feed him one. Fong Su was dumbfounded. The crown princess ordered him around, and it seemed like it was very convenient for her to order him around. Why aren't you going? Emo Lien disliked his slow reaction and glanced at him coldly. The latter hurriedly stepped forward, slapped open the patient's mouth, and flicked a pill in. Hey, what are you doing? Chapter 2484. Everyone looked at Fong Su and was about to criticize him all at once. The doctor who was squatting down to check on the patient shouted, "Shut up! Shut up! His pulse is stable. Poison? The poison is cured." Everyone couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. What kind of immortal pill was this? It could cure the poison as soon as it entered the stomach? One had to know that this miserable brother had successively been poisoned by the pills and steamed buns made by several pill alchemists. Not to mention curing the poison, every time he ate a steamed bun, his body's condition would worsen. At this rate, they thought this guy would die soon. But unexpectedly, everyone couldn't help but turn to look at the stoic-faced little girl standing in front of the crowd. This little girl didn't seem to find anything strange at all, as she silently watched everyone. "Miss, may I have the antidote pill? Take a look?" The doctor's eyes glowed as he stared at the medicine bottle in Fong Su's hand. This medicine bottle looked ordinary. It was pure white without any decorative patterns. However, the pills in this bottle were so extraordinary. Fong Su felt his hair stand on end from being stared at. Arbor motioned for him to pass the bottle to the doctor for inspection. However, the doctor exclaimed in a moment, "Miss, are these pills for sale? 20,000 per pill." The little girl waved her small hand as if she was selling trash, causing everyone's eyes to light up instantly. Emolien. My wife was really selling trash. After all, these were pills that she boiled in a small pot in the early stages. Naturally, their quality and effectiveness couldn't be compared to the ones she made now. I'll buy all the antidote pills. Get lost, oldly. Don't you feel guilty? How can you take all the good stuff for yourself? I'll buy it too. I'll buy it too. Miss, give me 10 pills too. Everyone clamored. Miss Chiao silently took out more than 40 medicine bottles and sold another batch of the accumulated trash. Including the digestion pills she sold earlier, her spirit coin card now had more than 11 million spirit coins. In a place like China, where prices were abnormally high, she could be considered a wealthy woman with more than 10 million spirit coins in savings. After all, she needed spirit stones to buy good things here. Spirit coins were still somewhat useful in the secular world. The little girl took back her spirit coin card. Her big eyes were full of vigor as she swept her gaze over the crowd. "Little alchemist, I am the shopkeeper of the Vigorous Pill Store. My surname is Li. In the future, if Little Alchemist has any pills to sell, you can bring them to our pill shop. The price will definitely be fair. You're always welcome." Everyone was busy trying to worm their way into being friends with this little alchemist, who looked extraordinary at first glance. Miss Chiao blinked and started a conversation mode, where she would answer a few questions. When everyone saw this, they said to themselves in their hearts, "An expert is an expert after all. His speech is concise and to the point, and he's especially imposing." Sir Jojo had earned spirit coins, so his attitude towards the owners of these elixir shops was quite good. While they were listening to their long-winded chatter, a group of people hurried over from the entrance of the corridor. The leader was a manservant with red lips and white teeth. He was led by an older man to Arbor. When he saw that it was just a young girl in front of him, his eyes revealed a faint trace of uncertainty. He raised his eyes to look at the old man. The old man hurriedly nodded and politely bowed to Arbor. "Little alchemist, please come with me. Little alchemist, please treat my young master's illness. You don't have to worry about the consultation fee." Chapter 2485. I'm not going, Arbor said expressionlessly. That manservant looked a little familiar, and just looking at him made him feel displeased. In addition, His eyes clearly revealed a trace of suspicion and uncertainty towards her. Arbor was not born to be a masochist. If he did not trust her, why did he look for her? It must be a troublesome matter. She was about to leave Langfang, so she couldn't be bothered to get involved again. Ling Ji's eyes were slightly angry. What kind of attitude was this girl showing? She took a closer look and realized that this girl seemed to be the weirdo who had been collecting fish with storage talismans for the past 2 days. If not for the fact that young master's illness could not be delayed any longer, he definitely would not have come to beg her. Ling Ji's expression became slightly more restrained. She held her breath and said word by word, "Miss, my young master's chronic illness is acting up." He had no choice but to seek. Miss Chiao turned and left. Was this page boy sure he could speak? His chronic illness acted up, and he could not find a better alchemist, so he had no choice but to seek her? What did he take her for? A backup alchemist? Not to mention whether she was happy to be treated or not. Her attitude was unparalleled. She really thought of herself as a dish. Arbor sneered. He grabbed Emolien's hand and walked towards the exit of Langfang. The two of them were about to return to the official ship when they heard the sound of someone falling into the water. Someone exclaimed, "Aya, it's bad. Miss Meng fell into the river." What followed was a mess. A man carried Miss Meng, who had fallen into the water, over and laid her flat at the entrance of Langfang. Then he took a few steps back uneasily. The middle-aged procuress of the 10,000 Red House ran over and cried, "This wastrel actually forced our Miss Meng to jump into the river." Someone cursed with righteous indignation. There were also people who pointed at the unconscious Miss Meng and said that she was pretentious. The middle-aged woman of Myriad Red House held Miss Meng's head and shouted to the people around her, "Is there anyone who can save our Miss Meng?" At this moment, a young man in his late 20s walked over. He squatted down and said, "I have a healing pill here. Eat it." The woman from the 10,000 Red House hurriedly took the medicine and gave it to Miss Meng. Not long after, Miss Meng slowly woke up. A few whispers could be heard from the crowd. Wang Yan's pills are indeed of excellent quality. Yes, although his pill refining skills are not bad, there's obviously something wrong with his brain. If there is nothing wrong with his brain, why would he reject the olive branch from Vessie's branch? He even angered the branch manager. Arbor's gaze had been fixed on Wang Yan ever since he took out the pill. The more he looked at him, the more he found him pleasing to the eye. He could not help but have an idea and beckoned to Wang Yan. "Big guy." Wang Yan turned around and saw that it was his benefactor who sold him the digestive pills yesterday. He hurriedly walked over and cupped his fists in greeting. "Miss, do you have any instructions for me?" The little girl rolled her eyes. "Did you refine that healing pill?" "That's right." Wang Yan smiled and nodded. "Thank you for your help yesterday. Those two are your friends." Arbor's small eyes swept to the side. Wang Yan looked over and nodded. "Yes, yes. Gudapeng and Little Chow are my close brothers. The branch manager of Vessi Pill House was so despicable and shameless that he banned your brothers." Wang Yan's expression darkened at the mention of this matter. "I just don't want my brothers to be restricted by the rules of the pill house." Chapter 2486. That's true. If you really enter that lousy pill house, you will be restricted greatly. Furthermore, I heard that the pill house is extremely black-hearted. Every time a pill refiner refines a pill, they will take 80% of the profits. Is that true? Arbor looked as if he was chatting very well with Wang Yan. That expression of his caused the surrounding people to be slightly stunned. Please, weren't they talking about saving Lady Meng? Why did they change the topic so quickly? Wang Yan nodded. Gung Dapeng and Little Chow, who were originally standing far away, could not help but walk over and look at this young lady curiously. 80% is really black-hearted. The people from the pill house are probably rotten to the core. Everyone, that there are quite a few people from the pill house here. How many people have you offended? Furthermore, the other pill house provides the ingredients, cauldrons and fire tools. Isn't it good to let the pill refiners earn 20% of the profits? The young lady did not care about the sour expressions of the pill house's people. Instead, she looked at Wang Yan eagerly. What plans do you have from now on? Wang Yan answered honestly. We originally wanted to win at the Milkhead Festival and obtain some spirit coins and ingredients. But now, Wang Yan laughed bitterly. We probably can't stay in Weishi Corridor Square any longer. We plan to. Wang Yan, do you think that you can roam the world just because you left Weishi River? Let me tell you, you have offended the Pill House. No matter which city you go to, you will not be able to live properly. Following this voice, Xiaomu looked up and saw a short winter melon rolling over like a ball on his short legs. This person was probably Manager Wang from Weishi Corridor Square. Arbor ignored him and patted Wang Yan's shoulder. Brother Wang Yan, how about this? You come with me, and I will provide you with ingredients, cauldrons and so on. If you perform well, I can even give you some more valuable pill formulas. We will split the pills 40 to 60. You 40 and I 60. What do you think? Are you interested in coming with me? Wang Yan was stunned. Geng Daping and Little Chow were in the same situation as Wang Yan. They were both stunned on the spot. Arbor wasn't in a hurry. He quietly watched them and tilted his head, sizing up Wang Yan and the other two. The more he looked at it, the more reliable it seemed. Just thinking about it made him feel a little smug. In the future Jojo, Sama would also have connections in his hands. He had talisman masters and alchemy masters. He had to quickly nurture the organization. God knows what would happen in the future. As the saying goes, if you have someone in your hands, you won't panic even if you encounter trouble. The quality of Wang Yan's elixir was indeed good. Although it was only a medium-grade healing elixir, its quality was close to that of a purple-grade elixir. Compared to the pills of any of the alchemists present, it was much stronger. If he was a talent, he should be nurtured well. It would be a pity to bury him in this Weishi River. On the other hand, President Wang of the Weishi branch was so angry that his face turned green. He really didn't expect that there would be a little girl who didn't know the difference between life and death. She actually dared to come here and snatch people away from Versailles? Are you looking for death? Weishi branch's President Wang had only spoken half a sentence when Emo Lien glared at him coldly, causing more than half of his imposing manner to vanish. President Wang looked suspiciously at Emo Lien. Who are you people? Chapter 2487. Fang Su stared at him coldly, then walked a few steps forward with his head held high, and waved his hand in front of Manager Wang. Manager Wang did not know what was going on, but his eyes seemed to be able to turn, and he immediately saw the appearance of the token in Fang Su's hand. There was a silver dragon carved on it. Was it? Could it be the highest level of Emperor's token? Oh my god, where did this great god come from? Why didn't he take out the Emperor's token earlier? Manager Wang was so frightened that his whole body trembled, and he immediately became more clear-headed. Although he still did not know the identities of these people in front of him, it did not mean that his attitude could not immediately change. His face immediately changed from a ferocious one to an amiable one. Emo Lien could not be bothered to talk nonsense with this kind of person. She turned around and said to the stunned Wang Yan and the other two, "The three of you come here." Wang Yan did not know why, but when he heard the young man's voice, he quickly nodded and called Geng Dapeng and Little Chow to follow him. When he regained his senses, the three of them were already on the deck of the official ship. Arbor sized them up and asked, "Have you thought it through? Are you coming with me?" When Wang Yan thought of the Weishi branch manager's attitude towards this pair of young people, he immediately guessed that the two of them were not ordinary people. Moreover, the conditions that the little girl offered for refining pills were really too generous. She could provide anything, and even left them with 40% of the pills. These conditions were definitely the best treatment in any medicine shop in the three prefectures. Wang Yan and his two brothers looked at each other. When they saw the other two nodding at him, he gritted his teeth and agreed. Arbor nodded and said to the three of them in an extremely good mood, "You will soon know that the choice you made today was definitely not wrong." Not only was it not wrong, half a month later, when Wang Yan and the other two received the two precious pill formulas, they would be beaming with joy and praise themselves for making the wise decision back then. After taking in three subordinates that Sir Jojo thought highly of for no reason, the little fellow was in a good mood. When Ling Gu came over with the doctor to seek an audience, her expression softened slightly. This time it was the elderly doctor who spoke. His attitude was very respectful. Arbor was a kid who grew stronger when he met someone stronger. Don't force yourself on her. If you force yourself on her, there's a 99% chance that she won't even look at you. Prince Emo already knew about her temper, that if you don't put on airs with her, she can put on airs and be even more infuriating. Now that this old doctor was being polite, she returned the favor with a distant and polite attitude. The old doctor repeated what he wanted to say and then said sincerely, "Miss, please don't mind our previous attitude." This child Ling Gu was too worried about her young master's illness. That was why she was so anxious and rash. Young ladies' pills are so good. Presumably your medical skills are also extraordinary. Miss, please step aside and let our young master have a look. The old doctor was trying to find any doctor in a desperate situation. After all, in this world, those who knew how to concoct pills might not necessarily know how to treat illnesses. Those who knew how to treat illnesses might not necessarily know how to concoct pills. Although there was only a single word difference between alchemist and physician, there was a huge difference. The little girl said with a straight face, "My consultation fee is very high." "Ah, yes. As long as Miss is willing to treat me, you can name your fee." Chapter 2488. 1 million. Why don't you just rob someone? Ling Gu, who was at the side, stared at Miss Chiao with eyes that were about to pop out of their sockets. After reporting the number, Miss Chiao calmly sat at the side and looked at the sky. The more she looked at this girl, the more she hated her. She clearly had a fair and cute appearance, but she just had to have facial paralysis. So what if she had facial paralysis? She was even a black-hearted facial paralysis. Just looking at her made one dislike her. Feng Su was speechless. My crown princess is too much of a scammer. How can I resolve this? After this trip, Feng Su already knew that if he wanted to make the crown prince happy, he had to obey the crown princess in everything. If the crown princess said something, there was no need for him to say anything. If the crown princess said to sit, if he stood, he would be going against the crown prince. It was fine to offend the crown prince, but if he offended the crown princess, he would be dead meat. 2 million spirit coins. Arbor raised her small hand disinterestedly. Okay. 2 million it is. Before Ling Gu could react, the old physician had already agreed without hesitation. Was Dr. Chong an idiot? Ling Gu looked at the old physician in shock. The old physician could only smile bitterly. After this interaction, he basically understood the girl's temperament. If you hesitated for a second and agreed, she could raise the price to 3 million spirit coins in a second. Do you believe it? Ling Gu was as angry as a toad, and her cheeks were puffed up. He looked like a 17-year-old youth with red lips and white teeth. If an ordinary girl saw him, she would definitely be delighted. However, Sir Jojo looked at him coldly, as if he was a cabbage. Ling Ji's body trembled inexplicably, and she felt that this girl was too strange. Physician Chong also felt that he was particularly persistent today. However, he had always believed in his feelings. For some reason, after observing the girl for 2 consecutive days, he felt that she was very confident. How could he be so sure that the little girl was definitely not an ordinary person? It should be a good thing to let her see his young master's troublesome symptoms. A few minutes later, Arbor slammed the curtain of the pleasure boat and walked to the deck angrily. Physician Chong followed her with a confused expression and repeatedly bowed with his hands folded in front. Miss, did something happen? Bastard. You actually tricked me into treating a stinky man with indecent behavior. Sir Jojo glared angrily at Dr. Chong and Ling Gu, who had rushed over. You asked for it. You used 8 types of aphrodisiacs, indulged in sex without restraint, and acted pitiful for what? Arbor turned around and dragged Emolien, who was still in a daze, away. When Ling Gu heard this, a hint of joy appeared on her face. In the past, the pharmacists who had treated the young master's illness didn't describe the symptoms in as much detail as this young lady. This young lady was indeed an expert who didn't show her true colors. She could actually tell that the young master had been poisoned by 8 different kinds of drugs. Ling Gu was shameless at once. She knelt on the ground with a thud and grabbed Arbor's skirt as she cried out, Miss, you've misunderstood me. Our young master is innocent. Our young master was captured by evil people and forced to drink these drugs. However, he would rather die than submit and remain loyal. Even in death he did not give in. You are an expert. You can see the symptoms of our young master at a glance. Please save him. It was me who failed to recognize Mount Tai and neglected the expert. Little magic doctor, you can beat me up. I definitely won't cry out in pain. Get out of the way. Miss Chiao was enraged. Chapter 2490. Upon discovering that no one was watching them, the little fellow finally moved her limbs and slipped out of Emolien's embrace, walking towards the ship's cabin. Emolien beamed as she turned her head to look at her fleeing figure, discovering that the little fellow's ears were red. She had to hurry back to hug, kiss, and bite her. The little lady held a pair of small paws behind her back as she walked towards the unconscious fifth young master Qin with a solemn expression. At this time, the fifth young master's entire head was drenched in sweat. His entire body was curled up, as if he was being roasted by a raging fire, yet also as if half of his body was soaked in icy water, feeling icy cold. Arbor opened her needle bag and inserted a few needles into him first. Physician Chong stood to the side, and when he saw the little lady's acupuncture technique, a pleasantly surprised smile instantly appeared on his face. The little divine physician's acupuncture technique was truly marvelous. Arbor walked up to hold the fifth young master's wrist and checked his pulse with rapt attention, occasionally revealing faint bewilderment and astonishment on her face. How did all kinds of aphrodisiac powder get into this body? It's only weakened by half after so many days, but he actually managed to endure it? The little fellow was currently muttering to herself. The figure on the bed moved slightly, and a pair of watery black eyes slowly opened. When he saw the young lady beside his bed and discovered that his wrist was currently being held by the other party, the fifth young master immediately felt unwell. His entire face was abnormally bashful and resentful, and his eyes seemed to spew fire as he glared at Arbor. He exerted all his strength to pull his wrist inwards, berating angrily. Why are you here? Who told you to bring her in? Get out! Get out! Arbor pursed her lips. You're still quite energetic. As she spoke, she stuck out a finger and inserted a needle into his chest. The fifth young master was horrified to discover that he actually couldn't move his entire body, and he didn't even have the strength to flick his pinky. Ah! The fifth young master nearly lost his composure and screamed crazily. His eyes revealed a deep sense of terror as he stared at Xiao Mu and shouted in a threatening manner, You demoness! What do you want to do? Dr. Chong saw that the situation was bad and hurriedly stepped forward to explain. Young master, don't panic. This young lady is not a bad person. She is the little godly doctor that we invited for you. What godly doctor? They were all liars. Liar. Let me go. You damn liar. When I can move again, I will definitely. Forget it. The little fellow grumpily used a finger to press down fifth young master's slightly raised head. With your frail body, you don't even have the slightest bit of cultivation. And you still want to talk big? What can you do to me when you can move? You can't beat me, and you can't bite me either. The fifth young master's face was ashen as he glared at her. He glared at this girl with a venomous mouth. At this moment, he didn't know why, but he felt like dying. He was the Qin family's trash. No wonder seventh brother hated him to the point of wanting him dead. His existence as a trash was an insult to the entire Qin family. Big brother and second brother were so shockingly talented, resourceful, and had profound cultivations. Although third brother and fourth brother weren't in the same realm as big brother and second brother, they were at least talented in the younger generation. He couldn't cultivate since he was young. The light in fifth young master's eyes slowly faded away, and his entire body trembled on the bed. Useless thing. Xiao Mu took out a wooden brush and brushed a layer of oily green mud-like substance onto his face. Chapter 2491. Fifth young master's body stiffened, but he couldn't move now. He could only watch as the devil-like girl brushed a layer of green paint on his face. The most hateful thing was that Physician Chong didn't even stop her. After brushing his face, The little girl threw the small bucket in her hand to Physician Chang. Brush his entire body. Physician Chang's mouth twitched silently. However, he wasn't an ignorant person. The little girl's medicine bucket contained good stuff. Although the color didn't look good, it emitted a faint fragrance. There was no doubt that it was a pure herbal medicine. Little divine doctor, after brushing, will the medicine in young master's body be cured? Do you think it's that simple? The little fellow roared. This guy has been drugged with 8 types of medicine X, and it's been dragging on for a long time. Many of the powders have already penetrated deep into his flesh and bone marrow. How can it be so easy to remove? However, although this guy had no spiritual power cultivation, he was still considered a man. If a normal man was drugged with this medicine, he would have been licentious long ago. How could he still hold it in? Unbelievable. Could it be that he couldn't? Miss Chiao froze. She put away the bad thoughts in her heart and coughed awkwardly. Forget it, he was already so pitiful. At most, she would treat him better the next time she came for treatment. Arbor said with her hands behind her back. We're leaving for Longyin City in the afternoon. However, your young master's illness is more troublesome. He needs at least 7 days of treatment. You mean after 7 days young master will be cured? He wouldn't have to suffer the torture and humiliation of Medicine X anymore? Physician Chang was excited. Arbor nodded, then asked curiously, let me ask you. Your young master's condition doesn't seem like he took a pill. How did he get drugged? This powder seeped into his body through his skin and eroded his internal organs. If it was a pill, the effect shouldn't be so good. Physician Chang felt that this little divine doctor indeed had some skills. He didn't dare to hide anything and hurriedly told her everything. It's like this little divine doctor. That madam of the National Security Agency is a famous perfumer in our capital, Longyin City. She's very skilled at making incense, but unfortunately, she doesn't use it properly. The incense she makes is very filthy. Perfumer? Incense production? Arbor nodded thoughtfully. Then her incense can also be used to make poisonous incense? Exactly. Arbor secretly put up his guard. He had to be careful of this old woman. Since she's not on good terms with Mo Lien, she'll definitely make trouble for me when I get back. Her perfume was so powerful. She didn't want to suffer a loss secretly. It had to be said that the little fellow had not returned yet, but she was already fully armed with a solemn expression. She was indeed very prescient. What do you think? Dr. Chang stared blankly for a moment before hurriedly coming to a realization. He hurriedly cupped his hands and said, of course we're going back to the capital with the little divine doctor. We've been out for a long time, so we can go back now. What a joke. If he didn't follow this misgodly doctor, then how would he be able to treat the remaining days? Nothing was more important than the young master's health. He had to follow. Arbor nodded and turned to look at the 5th young master, whose face was painted green, and who was glaring at her with a pair of starry eyes. The little fellow said to Dr. Chang, pay me 1 million first. When the treatment is over, then pay the remaining half. Chapter 2492. Don't worry, I don't cheat anyone. I won't lie to you. Yes. Physician Chang had a bitter expression under the murderous gaze of the 5th young master. He shakily transferred 1 million spirit coins to Jojo. Jojo took the money and left. He was still so straightforward. Physician Chang coughed and hurriedly called Ling Gu in to serve the young master. He didn't dare to look at the 5th young master's resentful gaze anymore. Master Jojo held her husband's hand and returned to her boat. Mo Lien immediately pulled her into his arms. Jojo, you don't have to work so hard. If you want spirit coins, just tell me. I'll give it to you. That won't do. Arbor waved her hand with a serious expression. What I enjoy is the process of earning money. Interesting. Mo Lien. Strangely, he always felt that when Jojo talked about earning money, her eyes suddenly lit up, as if they were emitting light. So cute. All right. The little fellow snuggled into his arms and raised her hand to touch his handsome face. Lien. Her soft little hand directly pinched the man's face. Her eyes sparkled like sparks. I have something to ask you. Mo Lien inexplicably felt his heart skip a beat. Looking at the little fellow's flirtatious posture, A bad premonition slid through his heart. Do virgins like you usually have any thoughts? Emolien. He felt as if fireworks were going off in his head, exploding with a bang. Colorful lights surged in his head, and he felt as if he was about to pass out. His weak self-control was already below freezing point, but this fellow was still teasing him with words. Moreover, her little body was snuggling in his arms. He couldn't take it. He wanted to pounce, bite, and sleep. Look at that fool just now. Although he can't cultivate, his willpower is quite strong. Arbor muttered to herself. Won't he be sick after holding it in for so long? Do you want to know? Emolien gritted her teeth and blinked. She lifted the little thing up and looked at it at eye level. Miss Chow suddenly felt a little scared. Huh? What did she say just now? Why did the man in front of her look like a tiger eyeing its prey? She quickly shook her head. Just pretend I didn't ask anything. How can I let you cower now? Did you enjoy your flirting just now? Wife. You'll know after you check if your husband has been holding it in for too long. No need. The little fellow hurriedly waved his hand and said with a serious face, How can I accept that? The two of them looked at each other with strange expressions. These words sounded strange no matter how one listened to them. Prince Emo suppressed his urge to burst into laughter, picked up the little fellow, and quickly walked into the cabin. Along the way, the little fellow was still nagging. Emolien, you really don't need that. Of course. Prince Emo said with a smile. Aren't you curious? Don't worry. Your husband is all yours inside and out. You can check him however you want. Then, he gently exhaled into her ear, which was filled with his scent. Your husband must be a virgin. Arbor! Exclamation point. That's not right. She wanted to tease this man. Why was she being teased instead? Sir Jojo's face was a little red, and his heart was beating very fast. Calm down. The little fellow secretly rubbed her hands. Turning her head, her little mouth formed an O shape. Husband, bad news. That pervert Fong Su has been watching us. Chapter 2493. Emolien! Exclamation point. Fong Su. No, it's not. It's not, Your Highness. Listen to my explanation. Explained. Oh my God. Splash. Bam. Fong Su inexplicably wanted to protest, but when he regained his senses, he realized that he had been kicked into the river. Yes, he had been kicked into the river. These two people were simply deranged. They had stuck together like glue and syrup the whole way. That was fine. What the eye didn't see, the heart didn't grieve over. What else could he do? He didn't expect to see such a scene when he came up to the deck to invite them over for a meal. Was it his fault? It couldn't be. And even if he had seen it, he had planned to sneak away and pretend that he hadn't seen anything. In the end, the little crown princess actually screamed at him like that. Oh my God! Fong Su soaked in the river, looking like he had nothing left to live for. He didn't know that this was the feeling of a single dog being abused, the feeling of misery, pity, and tragedy. On the other hand, the crown prince carried his wife back to the cabin and impatiently tugged at his collar. He raised his phoenix eyes and blinked. Jojo, come quickly. Your husband is ready. You can investigate as much as you want from top to bottom, inside and out. I'll let you investigate to your heart's content. Come. Arbor reached out to cover her face. She felt that although her face was expressionless now, her heart should be boiling. Her face should be so hot now that it could be cooked with porridge. What should she do? This evildoer, she couldn't take her eyes off him. How could he be so good-looking? He was usually cold and indifferent, gentle and courteous to everyone. Oh my God, she didn't expect him to be so seductive in bed. At this moment, this man had changed into a frivolous look. His phoenix eyes were blinking and the corners of his lips were raised in a frivolous manner, causing ripples in one's heart. Calm down. Sir Jojo looked at him with an expressionless face. She suddenly burst into laughter and jumped up, pushing him down onto the brocade couch. Then, she reached out to tug at his belt. He would be a fool if he didn't take advantage of her beauty. Following the principle of taking advantage of the situation, Lady Chow Chow decided to make a move on the peerless handsome man in front of her. All right. Since you've repeatedly asked me to examine you, Then I'll reluctantly do a full body examination for you. With that, her small hand tore the man's belt apart. Emolien was dumbfounded that why didn't his wife follow the routine? Shouldn't his wife immediately throw herself into his arms shyly and roll around, begging for mercy and pitifully begging him to let her go? After that, he was especially merciful. He secretly bullied the little fellow inside and outside, and then solemnly warned her not to play with fire. If you play with fire again, I'll eat you. But the plot didn't go as he expected. Cold sweat dripped down Crown Prince Mo's forehead. My dearest wife, your husband's self-control is really not as good as you think. Don't make a fuss. Crown Prince pressed the back of the little fellow's hand and looked at her, wanting to cry. In such a lousy place, he wouldn't let his baby suffer, although he was about to explode from holding it in. Husband, look, you're reacting. Xiao Xiao cried out in surprise. Please, your husband isn't a dead man. That if he still didn't have a reaction, wouldn't that be unacceptable? Oh, you guys are having fun. Just as the two were blushing, a discordant voice sounded. Chapter 2494. Emolien was speechless. Arbor was dumbfounded. He turned to look at Hu Shurchen, who had suddenly appeared in the room, and was looking at them with a smile. Master Jojo's face darkened as he communicated with Little Tree. Tree, get out here. Why did you let him out? Little Tree was crying in snot. The venerable immortal threatened me. He said that if I didn't let him out, he would cut Chocho into pieces and cook it in hot pot. Master, you don't know how scary the venerable immortal is. He squatted beside Chocho with a dagger and kept rubbing Chocho's face with it. I'm so scared, so scared. Boo-hoo. Master, I'm reporting you. Chocho is lying. The venerable immortal squatted beside him and fed Chocho a misty immortal seedling. Chocho turned against him. I'm going to kill you, you slanderer. Master, Chocho wants to kill Dian. Arbor was speechless. Jojo, help. Emolien wants to kill me. The venerable Peach Blossom immortal's exclamation sounded in his ears. Arbor couldn't help but slap his forehead. The two of them were looking at each other like tortoises. Oh. No doubt the two of them were at daggers drawn and looked like they were about to fight. Miss Chiao hurriedly shouted, I'll grill fish for you too. Eat those colorful divine fish. It can increase your cultivation. The two of them turned to look at her at the same time. They nodded and said in unison, Okay. Thus, the little fellow led the two of them into Fish Orchid Planet and used her divine perception to capture two colorful divine fish. She planned to share these two divine fish with the two of them. Little Tree, Little Water, Little Soil, and the others were attracted as soon as the fish were cooked. At the same time, Snow Leopard, Green Luan, Big Ape, Chirps, and the Blazing Blood Phoenix all rushed over in a row. Xiaomu dumbfoundedly held the two fish in her hands and stared straight at them just like that. These guys came because they smelled the aroma. Did they all want to snatch the fish from Master Jojo? Woof woof woof. The three puppies ran to her feet and circled around her. The weirdest thing was that the two eggs actually rolled all the way to her legs and rubbed against each other. Arbor! Exclamation point. You're just two eggs. Do you have mouths? Could it be eaten? Rub your sister. The three puppies pounced at her feet, and Arbor kicked them aside in annoyance. He sat down expressionlessly and glanced at Emolien and He Jechen. They're all here for food. Aya, what's that fragrant smell? Everyone who sees it gets a share. Everyone who sees it gets a share. Dao Wuji's voice drifted over. Arbor's small hands trembled slightly as he stared at Everlasting Blade, Fairy Ginkgo, and the others who were running over. He silently put down the two fish in his hands. You can divide these among yourselves. Husband, let's go. The little fellow pulled Emolien and ran out of Fish Orchid Star listlessly. He hurriedly ordered the Little Tree, Block Spirit Realm. I'm telling you, if you continue to be unreliable, I'll cut you into pieces and throw you into a hot pot. The Little Tree whined and begged for mercy. Then, it hurriedly blocked the entire spirit realm, so that those guys who were fighting over the two fish would not know that their master Jojo was currently taking out a colorful divine fish from his pocket and stuffing it into Emolien's arms. Husband, the two fish that Jojo roasted just now were burnt. You can roast this one. Emolien gladly agreed. She skillfully roasted a colorful divine fish with golden skin and sizzling oil. She carried the little fellow and smiled as she started to feed it. The scenery on the Wuxia River was boundless. The river flowed downwards. Under the setting sun, the official ship followed the sparkling river water all the way to Dragon Flame City. Chapter 2495. Xingqian. Mu Jingrui walked onto the deck and saw Mu Xingqian standing by the railing in a light white robe, gazing at the ship in the distance. Seventh uncle, look at this route. Is little sister also heading towards the imperial capital? It's very obvious, Mu Jingrui said with a smile. Don't think so much for now. We'll have a good talk with this stubborn little fellow when we reach the imperial capital. Mu Xingqian smiled faintly and nodded. He touched his wrist and seemed to be able to hear the sound of his blood pulsing. Was this what it felt like to be connected by blood? Seventh uncle, you must talk to her properly this time. Amen. Mu Jingrui grinned wryly. After fighting with her so many times, I can tell. You can't be too strong with the little lady. The stronger you are, the more she'll prickle you like a cactus. I guarantee you'll get bumps all over your head. Mu Xingqian was speechless and glanced at his seventh uncle. Why is that Qin Estate's ship always following Jojo? Who knows? Mu Jingrui didn't mind and shrugged. It has nothing to do with us. We'll reach the shore in half a day at most. Seventh uncle, you've been out for long enough this time. That's right. Mu Jingrui sighed. I still have to report work to the old man when I get back. It's so annoying. The uncle and nephew chatted casually as they watched the official ship on the surface of the river. There were quite a few schools of fish surrounding it. This situation had been going on for several days. Every day, when it was almost evening, the schools of fish would gather around the official ship. The little lady would come out of the ship's cabin to collect the fish in another incense stick's time. The two weren't surprised and were speechless. The little lady was collecting the fish as she went. She had probably collected a third of the fish in Wuxia River these past few days. Jojo must love to eat fish. Mu Xingqian's brain started churning. I remember that Grandpa raised a pond of Jade Lake moon carps. When the time comes, I'll give them to Jojo. She'll definitely be happy. Mu Jingrui was dumbfounded and silently glanced at his nephew. Hey, young master. Before you make such a rash decision, shouldn't you first ask the old man involved first? Just like that, Mu Xingqian secretly decided on a method to collect all the blue cloth moon carps and give them to his younger sister. Lady Qiao Qiao walked up to the deck and raised her small hands. He stood in front of the railing with a serious expression, as if he could summon the wind and summon the rain. He silently watched as the school of fish was sucked into the storage talisman. Goodbye, Westjiang. Thank you for giving Jojo so many different types of fish. Lanhai is finally not lonely anymore. The aquatic products here are really rich. Along the way, he had collected countless schools of fish. Speaking of which, shouldn't he dive to the bottom of the river to see if there were more plants? Arbor thought about it again. Forget it, it's better to keep a low profile. After collecting the fish, Arbor routinely jumped onto the Qin Estate's ship to treat the fifth young master. After this last round of treatment, it could be considered as completely bidding farewell to this fussy and troublesome fifth young master. She really had never seen such a troublesome man. He wasn't a young lady who had to put a handkerchief on his arm when taking his pulse. If her fingers accidentally brushed against his skin, he would look like he had been touched. He would glare angrily at her with accusatory eyes while using unpleasant words to squeeze her. If it weren't for the fact that Physician Chang continued to pay the consultation fee of 3 million, she would have flung her sleeves and left. Chapter 2496. Do whatever you want. Don't think that you can beat Sundara just because you're good-looking. She only reserved the right to beat Sundara for her dearest husband. You still want to paint me green? Fifth young master Qin glared at Miss Qiao with a dark face, as if looking at an enemy. Bah! Arbor directly pinned him down on the bed with one finger. So long-winded. Did he think she wanted to paint him green? That green paint was expensive, and she couldn't bear to spend it all on him. Didn't he see old man Chang embezzling her remaining green paint for her? What an unappreciative fellow. The Qin family's people were all extremely disagreeable. After Miss Qiao finished checking his pulse, She directly placed a small green sandalwood box beside his pillow. 100,000 for one antidote pill. Fifth young Master Qin gnashed his teeth. Who's poisoned? If you don't remove this residual fragrance, are you waiting for it to relapse? Arbor grumpily roared. Fifth young Master Qin was also infuriated as he glared at her indignantly. The pills you sold at the bread festival a few days ago were only 10,000 to 20,000. Why did you charge me 100,000? You're an eyesore. After saying this, Arbor directly stood up and left without even looking at this man out of the corner of her eye. Fifth young Master Qin was so angry that he collapsed on the bed, unable to speak for a long time. He only felt pain in his head, in his eyes, in his ears, everywhere. He was angered by this little girl. Ling Ge timidly flashed in and picked up the small green sandalwood box beside the young master's pillow to open it. A faint medicinal fragrance wafted out. Young Master Qin, it's a purple vein medicinal pill. It's really good. Ling Ge was born in an elixir patrician family, so she naturally had great judgment. After a few days of interaction, Ling Ge, this fellow, had long prostrated under Sir Jojo's aura and alchemy realm, without any moral integrity. He had truly never seen such a talented little girl. He probably couldn't find such an impressive little fellow, even if he searched their entire elixir patrician family. Even the eldest young master and physician Chang were helpless against the troublesome fragrance in the young master's body. Yet it was resolved by this little girl. Yesterday, Dr. Chang had secretly told him that the green paint that he had researched contained dozens of precious herbs. If he could develop it, perhaps in the future, his elixir shop would have another way to make money. If Jojo knew what Dr. Chang was up to, he would definitely sneer at him. Even if you studied all the herbs here, you wouldn't be able to make such a paste. After all, even if you searched the entire divine land, you won't be able to find even a drop of water from the icy pool of Peach Blossom Star. Ever since the cold pond water entered the back slope of the Peach Garden slope, it changed almost every month. At this time, the cold pond water was filled with dense spiritual energy. The coldness seeped into one's bones and penetrated one's heart. She was an expert in making medicine. It couldn't get any better. Sir Jojo walked out with his hands clasped behind his back, not caring at all whether fifth young Sir Qin was taking his medicine or not. Anyway, she had already left the food behind. It was his business whether he ate it or not. Ling Ge and Physician Chang would take care of this fussy fellow. When Physician Chang heard the news, he ran out with a smile on his face. Thank you, miss, for saving my young master. No need to thank me. I was only doing this for the money, so we're even now. Arbor waved his hand. These few days, the consultation fee had been rising every day. Previously, it was 2 million, but because of this young Master Qin's fussy personality, and Sir Jojo repeatedly went on strike, the fee had already risen to 7 million. Right. It was basically rising every day. The increase was very gratifying. Chapter 2497. Sir Jojo had been paid to do his job, so he requested to leave immediately after he was done. He had no intention of exchanging pleasantries with Physician Chang and the rest. Yet Physician Chang's expression was melancholy and reluctant to part. He had neglected to eat and sleep last night, studying the green paint for an entire day and night, but he could only identify 2/3 of the medicinal ingredients. Sighed that this green paint should be brought back to the Qin estate and invited the various alchemists to appraise it together. Little alchemist, looking at your direction, you should be returning to the capital. If you have time, you're welcome to visit our Qin estate. Arbor waved her small hand. We're just settling the transaction. When we meet in the future, just pretend we don't know each other. Physician Chang, that's so melancholy. What kind of cold and indifferent personality was this? He had already pulled a long face and exchanged pleasantries like this. Woo-woo. The little alchemist still didn't want to see them. It was all Sir's fault for being fussy. He had indeed thoroughly offended this little expert these past few days. Arbor returned to her family's official ship and saw Emolien walking up to the deck. The man had come up at the right time. Seeing her return, his eyes couldn't help but light up. Wife, you're so early today. Arbor glanced at him speechlessly. There's actually nothing much to do today. I'll just take his pulse and feed him a poison cleansing pill. Emolien was in a foul mood. Jojo ran to the Qin estate's ship every day. Although it didn't exceed an hour every day, he was still worried. Once he thought of the Qin family's Ada and Air, he inexplicably felt stifled. This was a precise intuition. He kept feeling that these two people would do something bad. Let's not walk so close to the Qin estate's people in the future, all right? Okay. Arbor nodded his small head and answered without any objections. Anyway, she didn't like the Qin family. From Qin Guilu to Omega Kotoku to this fussy fifth young master. None of them were good people. Emolien's heart cheered again when he saw her agree so quickly. He reached out and pulled her into his arms. He lowered his head and smiled at her. Jojo, you're the best. Xiaomu nodded her small head in all seriousness and said in all seriousness, I also think that I'm really good. Emolien hugged her and laughed. After the meal, the two of them had a good afternoon nap together. At 10 o'clock in the evening, the ship anchored at the shore. Arbor looked up and saw a checkpoint on the outskirts of sovereign capital. It was also quite large, making it look like a small town. There were many people coming and going. Many people were still lining up in front of the checkpoint, waiting to enter. After Emolien came ashore, she instructed Fang Su not to disturb the people too much and to keep a low profile. The latter quickly walked up to the soldiers at the checkpoint and showed them the imperial token in his hand. The other party was obviously shocked by the emperor's order and hurriedly bowed respectfully. Upon hearing the news, the small captain at the checkpoint came over and respectfully welcomed Emolien, Xiaomu, and the others over. Nothing happened on the way there. It's actually so peaceful. Arbor blinked curiously. The crown prince's return to the capital was such a big move that there would definitely be many forces watching. However, it was still early for them to come over from Weishi River. There will be trouble when we get back. Emolien curled her lips in a spurious smile. After all, it took time to send a message back and forth. They hadn't even stepped into the imperial capital's territory, yet Arbor looked around curiously and quickly followed Emolien through the checkpoint. Everyone changed into a carriage pulled by a spirit stallion and headed toward the imperial capital in a low-key manner. Chapter 2498. These spirit stallions were extremely fast. About an hour later, Xiaomu lifted the curtain to take a look. She immediately caught sight of the silhouette of the tall city gate tower amidst the night fog. On the city wall hung two large black words with gold background, Long Yen. The carriage crossed the moat and came to the suspension bridge. Fang Su only showed his face, and the city guards quickly let him pass. Jojo leaned against the window, looking at everything curiously, observing the city wall that went straight into the clouds. This city gate tower has been reinforced several times before. Emolien held her little hand and said, just in case. Arbor knew what he meant by just in case. Although there were no corpse puppets in the divine lands, who knew? If the power of Tianyin developed to this extent, then very soon, this pure land would fall into instability. Xiao was very much in favor of Crown Prince Mo's precaution. The carriage slowly entered the city gate's official road, and after a short while, it was stopped by another checkpoint. Fang Su jumped off the carriage, frowned, and went up to negotiate. When he came back, he bowed respectfully to the carriage. Your Highness, the holy nun of the Temple of Sun and Moon is about to enter the city. This main road has been closed for an hour. Emolien and Arbor were not people who had to take the main road to show off. Hearing this, they nodded and said, then let's take a detour. So Fang Su drove the carriage, turned around, and went to the side street. Your Highness, His Majesty already knows that you have entered the capital. Do you want to go back to the East Palace first, or go back to the East Palace? Emolien interrupted Hu Dequan and said lightly. Hu Dequan silently shut his mouth, secretly sympathizing with His Majesty. Your son doesn't like you very much. The carriage was heading in the direction of the Imperial Palace. From the city gate to the Imperial Palace, it was estimated to take 2 hours. But now that they had taken a detour, it would probably take more than 2 hours. Night had fallen, and all the houses were brightly lit. In the entire Longyan city, The starlight and the lights reflected each other. Emolien reached out and stroked Arbor's hair. Looking at her sleeping soundly in his arms, his heart was filled with a faint sense of satisfaction. The carriage slowly came to a stop. Emolien raised her eyebrows slightly and lifted the curtain a little. Fong Su jumped out of the car and walked over quickly. He said in a low voice, "Your Highness, that saintess has already entered the city. There are so many people in front that the carriage can't pass." Emolien looked ahead. The palanquins, carriages, and horses had all stopped. They were blocked behind the crowd. The main street in front of them was so crowded that the car couldn't make a turn. Fong Su's voice was dissatisfied. "A saintess of the temple is making such a big fuss. She really knows how to put on airs." Emolien's expression remained aloof. His fingers lingered on the girl's soft and fragrant hair as he said softly, "Then we'll wait for a while." Under the night sky, Dragon Flame City looked magnificent. The rows upon rows of restaurants and tea houses on the streets were already filled with people. In front of the buildings, and on both sides of the street, there were also many people who had come to worship the saintess of the temple. Along with the low humming of ceremonial music, there was a sound. The first to arrive were the 200 temple guards who were escorting the saintess. They rode on the back of a black wolf with shiny black fur that was half the height of an adult. They raised their heads and puffed out their chests, looking high-spirited as they glanced disdainfully at the people around them. They looked exceptionally arrogant, and the smugness in their eyes almost turned into a substantial sense of superiority. Chapter 2499. Following behind them was a group of more than 80 white-robed priests who looked extremely holy. Each of them held a long staff of the same size with the same engravings on it. They walked with their heads held high and their chins slightly raised, looking arrogantly at the worshippers on the side of the road. Their domineering aura was fully released, that the four corners of the saintess carriage were decorated with fist-sized pearls, and a curtain inlaid with gold and silver threads covered the body of the carriage. The crowd could only see a slender figure sitting inside. The more indistinct the figure was, the more anxious the people were. They felt that this saintess must be a peerless beauty. Behind the carriage, there were hundreds of young girls around 17 or 18 years old with graceful figures and white veils covering their faces. Each of them held a flower basket with many plum blossoms in it. They scattered the flowers as they walked, chanting something in unison. Finally, 300 temple guards brought up the rear. The procession moved along the busiest main street of Dragon Flame City, Changle Street. The front of the procession had already passed through the central axis of Changle Street, and the rear of the procession had just turned into the main street. The grandiose procession of more than 1,000 people, who were singing and singing, attracted the attention of over 10,000 people from all over the city. The elderly and women bowed in worship. The young people looked envious, and the young children ran and cheered in the crowd. Sir Qiao Qiao woke up amidst this commotion. She creased her small brows and looked up to see Emolien's focused eyes. Chirp. The little guy was still in a daze after being kissed on the cheek. Emolien smiled with her eyes curved. "Did I wake you up? But we should reach the entrance of Lusheng Gate in about half an hour. You woke up just in time." The little fellow moved its limbs and leaned against the window to take a look. Its eyes reflected the scene of a grand celebration. "Hey, there are so many people. Emolien, what are they doing?" "The saintess of Sun Moon Temple has entered the city. All the people in the city are here to worship her," Emolien said with a slightly sarcastic tone. "What temple?" It was just a group of people fishing for fame. It was more like they were fooling the people. Of course, the Divine Palace had also recruited a large number of clerics, and even priests who had pledged their loyalty to the Divine Palace. These people were collectively known as disciples of God. These cultivators attached themselves to the temple, obtained cultivation resources, and worked for the temple. Many rogue cultivators who did not have a family to rely on were very willing to join the temple. "Greetings, Saintess. Greetings, Saintess." The commoners were all excited as they knelt down and kowtowed. In the hearts of these ordinary people, the saintess of the temple had such a high status. She was simply the sun goddess that everyone looked up to. "Silence. The saintess wants to issue an oracle to warn everyone." "Ah, Does Lord Holy Nun have anything to say? The crowd below was whispering to each other. For a moment, tens of thousands of people held their breaths and waited on Changle Street. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Arbor pulled Emolien out of the carriage. He raised his head and looked at the brightly lit area. The corner of his mouth twitched. It's quite realistic. Oracle? Hee. Citizens of the Divine Prefecture, citizens of Dragon Flame City, your crown princess, who is about to return, will become the source of disaster. She will be the beginning of the breeding of the entire evil world. She will bring us endless calamity, fear, and death. A cold female voice sounded without any cadence, with a trace of arrogance that could not be ignored. Curtains made of gold and silver silk fluttered in the air. Chapter 2500. The Saintess's voice was very infectious. Everyone felt as if their hearts had been grabbed, and they could barely breathe. Their hearts were heavy, and the entire air was filled with the feeling that a storm was coming. Everyone did not even dare to breathe loudly. At this moment, a scream suddenly came from the left side of the crowd. There was a commotion in the crowd. Everyone turned around and saw an old woman in her 60s or 70s suddenly pouncing over, as if she had gone mad. She grabbed the neck of a young man beside her with astonishing strength. The old woman's eyes were emitting a terrifying bloody light, and her dilated pupils were filled with blood vessels. She opened her mouth wide and was about to bite the shoulder of the frightened young man. The Saintess, who was wearing a purple dress and had a faint immortal aura, suddenly moved. She lightly stretched out a slender finger and tapped the old woman's forehead across the air. The old woman, who was still screaming and struggling with boundless strength, suddenly stopped as if she had been summoned by a Buddha. Her eyes were unfocused, and her hands drooped down weakly. The crowd pushed each other to make way, and screams rose and fell one after another. The women hugged their children and looked at the old woman who had suddenly attacked in horror. The young and strong men volunteered and tied the old woman up with a thick hemp rope. Disaster, fear, death. The crowd did not know why, but at this moment, they all felt extremely cold. The words that the Saintess had just said were like an ancient Sanskrit that echoed in their hearts for a long time. Could this be true? Could the crown princess of the great divine continent, who was about to return, be a monster? Would she bring them disaster, suffering, and death? Everyone could clearly see that this old woman was over 70 years old and was an ordinary person. She should have been an old woman who was slow and powerless. But just now, when she suddenly burst out with that power, even the young man who she was holding by the neck was unable to push her away. Wasn't this the source of the disaster? It was indeed the beginning of the birth of the entire evil world. The crown princess had yet to enter the capital, and a monster had already appeared in the capital. Terrifying. Everyone looked at each other in horror and saw a trace of panic and fear in each other's eyes. He raised his head and looked at the Saintess in front of him. The purple gauze dress was ethereal, like the incomparably holy snow on a high mountain, and also like a Saintess bathed in the divine light of the sun and moon. Everyone prostrated themselves in worship, and some even asked in fear, "How can we stop this disaster, Saintess?" The Saintess spoke in a flat tone, as if she was a cold-blooded machine. There were no ups and downs in her speech, and her eyes were indifferent. She looked at the people prostrating at her feet with benevolence and said to them softly, "Eliminate the source of the disaster, and the divine land will return to peace and tranquility. Destroy the source of the disaster." The priests standing behind the Saintess suddenly raised their arms and roared, "Destroy the source of the disaster." The crowd was agitated, and all the citizens began to shout in this forceful atmosphere. These fools! Feng Su's face was twisted with anger. Were they stupid? They actually dared to slander the little crown princess in front of the crown prince. They really didn't want to keep their heads anymore. While holding Xiao Qiao's hand, Crown Prince Emo stood at the periphery of the crowd. He gazed icily at that lofty and incomparably pure Saintess of the Temple of the Gods, his eyes bursting with intense killing intent. Chapter 2503. Oh my God! Murder, murder! This is really murder, Terrifying, terrifying, terrifying. They wanted to go home and find their mother. They had only come to worship the saintess of the temple, but they did not expect to find a murder scene. It was so bloody and brutal that everyone was so frightened that they only wanted to sneak back home. None of you are allowed to leave, Arbor roared. The little white snake on her wrist straightened its body and transformed into a ferocious snake head, roaring fiercely at the group of temple guards in front of it. Everyone was dumbstruck. The entire Changle Street was now enveloped by the little white snake's netherworld power. Everyone was trapped in the netherworld domain. Not to mention escaping, they couldn't even move their bodies. Their legs trembled and went soft. They all lay paralyzed on the ground, not daring to move at all. Sob, sob, sob. This time, the crowd really wanted to cry. If they had known, they would have been like their wives and husbands. They would not have come out to join in the fun, and would have slept at home. Look at how they had come out to join in the fun. In the end, they might lose their lives here. Arbor's cold gaze swept across everyone present. The little girl with the cold face stood under 1,000 feet long great void serpent. She was as tiny as a speck of dust. She threw away the corpse in her hand, and coldly swept her gaze across the group of temple guards who were retreating. She slowly raised her cold voice. If you are not afraid of death, then come at me. The temple guards gathered around their saintess, Nie Yaoguang. As if they were facing a great enemy, they stared at Arbor in front of them with fearful eyes. The white snake beside this girl had such a terrifying aura. Could it be a divine beast? Everyone in the upper 3 continents knew that mystical beasts ran everywhere. Spirit beasts were common, divine beasts were rare, and sacred beasts were legends. From this, it could be seen that divine beasts were not something that everyone could see. Therefore, there was no way to compare. But this form, this aura, and this terrifying pressure, even if they had never seen a divine beast, they should be able to feel it. The terrifying pressure of this white snake was not something a mere spirit beast could emit. Saintess Nie Yaoguang's face under the veil was ashen. She gritted her teeth and said coldly, "Don't go too far." Another priest beside Nie Yaoguang said in a trembling voice, "That's right. Don't be too arrogant. How dare you attack our saintess? Do you know what the consequences will be? Ah!" A blue spiritual cleansing flame suddenly transformed into a blue wolf, pouncing over and biting the cursing priest in its mouth. He chewed it in a few bites. In fact, it was just turning the arrogant priest into ashes. The saintess face paled. Standing around her, the group of priests who were originally protecting her all widened their eyes in horror, and took a few steps back, not daring to utter a single word. Their eyes were filled with deep fear, and their bodies were trembling nonstop. Many of these priests were just ordinary people. In the past, no matter which city they went to, they would always receive compliments and praise from everyone. When had they ever encountered such a sudden situation? So what if you are the source of disaster? Arbor's cold voice faintly rose on Changle Street. What can you do to me? Everyone's pupils constricted, and they all sucked in a breath of cold air. Chapter 2504. The little girl's aura was as sharp as a blade. Even though she was standing alone in front of thousands of temple guards, she still didn't show the slightest trace of fear. In front of absolute strength, you are just a bunch of pitiful ants. The stoic face's words were truly unpleasant to the ears. All of the temple guards were about to go crazy from her anger. Nie Yaoguang bit her lips tightly and glared hatefully at the girl in front of her. She said word by word, "Don't be too arrogant, Zhang." Slap. The instant everyone's hearts tightened, they heard the crisp sound of a slap. There was a distinct imprint of 5 fingers on Nie Yaoguang's face. At this time, the veil on her face had already been cut off by the little girl. Her fair jade-like, charming face was flushed red, and her entire body trembled in the wind. "Protect the holy nun!" A temple guard sternly yelled. Everyone rushed toward Arbor like a tide. Arbor was as fast as a flash, swiftly passing through the heavily guarded temple guards. As long as she brushed past the guards who wanted to reach out to stop her, they would all be punched to the ground. The remaining people who wanted to surround her were swept away by the little white snake's tail and thrown heavily onto the street. Bang, 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 bang. Everyone only saw hundreds and thousands of temple guards being beaten to a pulp by the little girl alone. Many people were dumbstruck. They didn't know what words to use to describe this scene. Holy Nun Nie Yaoguang was instantly flustered and exasperated. A cold light flashed across her charming face. She summoned a long sword from her conscience and jumped forward to greet the little girl. Slap! Arbor backhanded another slap to the holy nun's other cheek. Nie Yaoguang was slapped so hard that he spun around on the spot. He was so angry that he leaned back. Bang! Arbor raised her leg and kicked her in the stomach. Nie Yaoguang only felt that the scenery in front of her was retreating rapidly. She flew out uncontrollably and landed heavily on the ground. The sound of the bang landing on the ground was so loud that it shocked everyone to the point of being dumbstruck. Their hearts were all thumping, and they subconsciously retreated backwards, revealing a large area in the middle. The sound of a pin dropping could be heard. A bunch of ants dares to boast shamelessly. Arbor sneered and stepped on the saintess's chest. Her originally towering chest was unceremoniously stepped on by the little guy. Saintess Nie Yaoguang felt a swelling pain in her chest. It was as if she was being suppressed by a powerful aura. She was so angry that she was trembling. You dare. Pa. You ah. Pa. Pa pa. 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 Saintess Nie Yaoguang was speechless. As long as she said a single word, the little fellow would slap her face. After dozens of slaps, even though the saintess used her spiritual energy to protect her body, her entire face was swollen like a pig's head. Does it feel good? Arbor stepped on her chest and slowly squatted down. He approached her and coldly stared at her. Does it feel good? Everyone. Mo Lien, Fong Su and eunuch who silently upgraded the little crown princess to the highest level of monsters that could not be provoked. He secretly warned himself that his previous decision was correct. Even if he had to offend his great crown prince, he absolutely could not offend the crown princess. If the crown princess said east, they had to go east. Chapter 2505. If the crown princess wanted to go south, they had to support her with all their might. Don't fucking blabber nonsense, understand? Whatever the little crown princess said was right. This was the first law of the divine continent. The two of them silently remembered this law in their hearts and regarded it as a golden rule. Not to mention, the rivers and lakes in the future had helped them avoid many disasters and blocked many difficulties. It had allowed the two of them to walk to the end and laugh at the heroes, but now, the two of them silently retreated a few steps and stood behind the crown prince. They coughed lightly and looked sympathetically at the saintess. This matter was not over yet. The little crown princess had a stomach full of anger. If she did not vent it out, it was hard to guarantee that she would not vent it on these pitiful people. So, yes, crown princess, vent your anger to your heart's content. Speak. Arbor grabbed the saintess by the collar and stared at her with a cold smile. Does it feel good? The saintess' face was red, and she was so angry that she could not stop trembling. Trembling. Her lungs should have exploded from anger at this moment. However, the little crown princess held her with an expression that said she would strangle her if she did not answer. She was the dignified saintess of the temple. She could be killed but not humiliated. You, demon, witch. Slap. Dozens of slaps were thrown over, and the saintess spat out a mouthful of blood. She was definitely angry. If I ask you a question, then answer me honestly. I hate it when people dilly-dally. Arbor picked up the saintess' head like it was trash and slammed her head heavily on the ground. That muffled sound fell heavily on everyone's heart. They thought that the saintess' head would be smashed like a watermelon by the little girl. Fortunately, the saintess used spiritual energy to protect her body. Her head did not shatter, but she lost a few teeth. Her mouth was full of blood, and her originally white face was now completely unrecognizable. Saintess, holy nun. A group of priests, together with the temple guards, wailed and wailed. They wanted to rush forward without a care for their own safety. Arbor coldly glanced at them and shouted, "Kill them!" Hiss! The little white snake's eyes flashed with anger, and it suddenly swooped down toward the ground. Its huge snake mouth sucked, and these people were like dolls in a storm. They trembled with fear, and their eyes were about to split open as they rushed toward the snake's huge mouth, unable to control themselves. The onlookers were almost going crazy. What a terrifying demon that could chew a dozen people in one bite. Everyone fell on their butts and sat on the ground, trembling all over. No one can save you. Arbor's cold hand climbed up the Saintess's neck. The Saintess, Nie Yaoguang, only felt as if a soft and cold poisonous snake had climbed onto her neck. Her entire body involuntarily shivered and curled up. Come, tell everyone. Does it feel good? Arbor's cold fingers deepened the strength on Nie Yaoguang's neck. Nie Yaoguang's tears flowed, but she still could not stop herself from nodding in fear. She stammered and let out a broken voice. It feels good, it feels good. Mu Jingrui and Mu Xingchen stared dumbfoundedly at the scene before them. From the beginning to the end, it only took half an incense stick's worth of time. The little girl used this terrifying power to absolutely crush the saintess of the temple. There was simply no room for them to make a move. Chapter 2506. Arbor raised her small hand high. The huge white snake was like a burst of green smoke, curling and shrinking. It once again coiled around her wrist and fell silent. The restrictions of the nether spirit domain had clearly been removed, but the entire Changle Street was still filled with a deathly silence. A heavy pressure, like the energy released by an ancient ferocious beast, pressed down heavily on the bottom of everyone's heart. No one dared to move a single step, and no one dared to whisper a word to each other. Silence spread on Changle Street. Who dares to make trouble on Changle Street? An angry roar exploded the silence at this time, instantly rescuing everyone from the spell of deathly stillness. Finally, there were a few traces of almost inaudible gasps from the crowd, and the frightened and painful sobs of women spread out. Under the emperor's feet, Changle Street was very close to the imperial palace. It had always been a place where the imperial guard strictly checked. The person who came was a young man with slanted eyes and an aquiline nose. He led a group of soldiers and hurried over from one end of the street. When he saw the disorderly Divine Hall team, a trace of cold light immediately emerged from the bottom of his eyes. He roared at the surrounding people who didn't dare to breathe loudly. Who did this? The people in the front row were scared to death. Who dared to speak? They all shrank back a few steps, shrinking their necks and pitifully huddling together. They once again became the target of this soldier's anger. Whoosh! A blue flame whooshed and landed at the feet of the aquiline-nosed young man. The young man was shocked and subconsciously raised his feet and shrank back 2 steps. His cold gaze swept over and fell on Arbor. Are you blind? Why are you shouting at others? The aquiline-nosed young man narrowed his eyes maliciously. He sized up Arbor and coldly said, Did you do it? Did you hurt the people of the Divine Hall? How could it be? This little girl's cultivation realm looked like that of a little level 1 spirit master. How could she rely on her own strength to overturn the group of Divine Hall soldiers? If Arbor knew this guy's thoughts, she would certainly tell him mockingly. Learn about the aura-concealing talisman. Walking outside, Jojo loved to act low-key. So what? Why don't you all grow a pair of eyes and not bump into me? Why did they have to go up one by one and get slapped in the face by Jojo? They deserved it. The people from the Divine Hall are honored guests of the Divine Prefecture. How dare you attack them? At this time, the priests of the temple finally came back to their senses. Looking at Arbor that was surrounded by the hook-nosed young man, a young priest swallowed his saliva, pointed at Arbor and said sternly, She is a sinner of God. This woman beat up the saintess of the shrine and killed so many disciples of God. She must be sentenced to death. Death penalty. Death penalty. He will be sentenced to death. The people in the Divine Hall roared with great emotion. The hook-nosed young man looked coldly at Arbor and pointed forward. Catch her. A large number of soldiers rushed forward from behind the man. Just as the fight was about to break out, a cold voice came from behind the crowd. I would like to see who dares to make a move. Fong Su waved his hand and rushed over with dozens of Greenwood guards. He punched the faces of the capital garrison soldiers. Several people stepped back in pain and covered their faces with their hands. They looked at Fong Su and his people angrily. The hook-nosed young man finally saw who Fong Su was. Chapter 2507. Commander Fong. His eyes narrowed. Why are you here? Fong Su looked at him with a fake smile. I think you're really blind. Can't you see that my master is here? Of course, the hook-nosed youth saw him. Behind Fong Su stood a magnificent and extremely handsome man. How could he not see him? It was just that he wanted to selectively ignore this person. Now that Fong Su reprimanded him with such a fake smile, he felt like his scalp was about to explode. The hook-nosed youth's neck stiffened as he turned his head to the side. When he finally met that pair of pitch-black phoenix eyes, his heart inexplicably thumped. The capital garrison is the responsibility of the Imperial Guard. Commander Fong, please don't bring the forest guards to casually intervene in this matter. The hook-nosed youth lowered his eyes and said coldly. Then he raised his hand and ordered the Imperial Guard. Arrest him. Let's see how you're going to arrest him. Emo Lien interjected coldly and waved her hand lightly. On the eaves of Changle Street, tens of thousands of densely packed heads poked out uniformly. They were neatly dressed in dark purple heavy armor and held bows and arrows. They knelt on one knee and shouted in unison. Greetings, Your Highness the Crown Prince. Greetings, Your Highness the Crown Prince. The sound of the sea was like layers of rolling waves, rolling over and over. The entire Changle Street was filled with such a sentence that made people's hearts surge and emotions surge. How could the people on the streets of Changle Street stand still at this time? They all knelt down in unison. Their faces were dumbfounded, and they didn't understand the situation. They lowered their heads and kowtowed heavily. The Purple Forest Guards, the most elite team of the Ming Guards Battalion. They were actually in the hands of the Crown Prince. At this point, Fong Su finally caught his breath and heaved a heavy sigh of relief. Fortunately, I chose the right team early on. Haha, otherwise, I would be the one in a daze right now. The 7 teams in the Emperor's hands, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo and purple, could be said to be the most elite troops in the entire Divine Prefecture. How many princes and heirs in the imperial capital coveted this force? The Emperor didn't give a single one. Sure enough, he gave it to his own son. His own son, even if his son had not been in the Divine Land for more than 10 years, so what? The Great would give him everything he deserved. Fong Su was so excited that he took 2 deep breaths. His dog eyes lit up as he looked at his master's tall and straight back. At this moment, everyone felt that the Crown Prince's image was incomparably lofty, and everyone had to look up to him. The hook-nosed man also took a few deep breaths, and finally faced the situation in front of him. In fact, Emo Lien's existence was very eye-catching. It could be said that the hook-nosed man's first glance landed on Emo Lien. However, he didn't want to admit it. How could a good-for-nothing who hadn't been in the Divine Land for more than 10 years still occupy the position of Crown Prince of the Upper Divine Land? What ability did he have? What was his cultivation level? What contribution could they make to the imperial court and the people inside and outside the Divine Land? Not a single one. How could such a person become the Crown Prince as soon as he returned? However, reality proved that this person was not someone he could disown just because he wanted to. No matter how much he ignored him, the Crown Prince was the Crown Prince. No one could ignore him. The hook-nosed man raised his head and stiffly bent down slightly. He gritted his teeth and bowed. Deputy Commander of the Imperial Guard, Emo Zhuang, greets Your Highness the Crown Prince. Take him. Emo Lien narrowed her eyes and shouted coldly. Chapter 2508. Fong Su rushed forward with a few forest guards, grabbed Emo Zhuang's arm, and pinned him behind his back. Emo Zhuang raised his head and roared with a malicious expression. What does Your Highness Crown Prince mean? I just don't like you. Prince Mo's words made the hearts of all the commoners twitch. Take him. Beat him. These 3 words fell coldly and mercilessly. Fong Su's eyebrows twitched. He raised his arm and hurriedly grabbed Emo Zhuang's arm, slapped him in the mouth, and stuffed a pill used to seal spiritual energy into his mouth. In the next second, Fong Su kicked the hook-nosed man to the ground. Seeing that Emo Zhuang still wanted to struggle, the 2 forest guards raised their boards and pressed them down with 2 paw-paw sounds. Emo Zhuang was anxious, angry, and furious. The imperial guards below were even more furious and wanted to rush forward to save him. Emo Lian's cold words stopped everyone in their tracks. If anyone dares to disobey, kill. 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 The entire Chang'e Street was filled with the roars of the Purple Forest Guards. The imperial guards shrunk their necks in unison and peeked at Her Highness in fear. Then they stopped. Pa. Pa pa. Pa pa pa. The sound of the boards hitting the ground resounded in the deathly silence of Chang'e Street. The commoners all lowered their heads and held their breaths. Even the sound of their breathing was deliberately lowered. They were really scared. The Crown Princess didn't even care about the temple emissaries group. And His Highness the Crown Prince was even more frightening. He didn't say anything, but once he did, he could easily decide someone's life or death. Both of them were people who stood at the pinnacle of power. They weren't people that small commoners like them could slander at will. Even if the temple emissaries spread rumors, it couldn't be spread through the mouths of these small commoners. Otherwise, with these two strict and arrogant methods, if they really wanted to pursue the matter, their entire families would die without a burial place. The only thing they could do was to keep their mouths shut and not talk nonsense like the disciples of the temple. After all, the divine halls could evacuate from the divine prefecture at any time, but they were still living on this continent and had nowhere to run. And now, there were many people kneeling on Chang'e Street who hated the disciples of the Sun Moon Temple for causing trouble. What bullshit source of disaster! The way they saw it, the people from the sacred palace were the source of disaster. If they hadn't spoken such nonsense and wantonly slandered Her Highness the Crown Princess, how could the Crown Princess have sealed off the entire Chang'e Street? How could the Crown Prince have been so furious that he had to take measures to suppress them? There were even people who had deep doubts in their eyes. This mysterious saintess had predicted that the Crown Princess, who was about to return, would be the source of disaster. Did she predict that she would be in trouble today? That she would be slapped so hard by the Crown Princess that even her parents wouldn't be able to recognize her? It seemed that she had not calculated correctly at all. What saintess of the temple? She was just bragging. The Sun Moon Temple, from top to bottom, is a group of frivolous and ignorant swindlers. Pass down my order. All the disciples of the Sun Moon Temple are to be flogged 100 times and imprisoned immediately. Don't. Please spare our lives, Your Highness. Your Highness, Your Highness, we know we were wrong. Please spare our lives, Your Highness. The disciples of the temple wailed in succession. Among these people, more than half were commoners. After 100 floggings, they were doomed to die. Chapter 2509. The young priest who had previously made a noise, fanned the flames, shouted slogans, and encouraged the ink pillars to catch Jojo and execute her. At this moment, he was hiding in the crowd like a quail, not daring to make a sound. But this didn't mean that Emo Lian was willing to let him go. He glanced over coldly, and his eyes were fixed on the young priest's body. Him! His slender finger pointed straight over. Emo Lian ordered with a cold expression. Pull him over! The young priest trembled like a disheveled quail in the wind. His whole body was like a sieve, trembling and trembling. When the Greenwood guard's hand pressed on his body, the priest rolled to the ground, repeatedly kowtowing and shouting, Your Highness, spare me, spare me, spare me. This lowly one was just confused for a moment. Lowly one. This lowly one spoke without thinking, offending the Crown Princess. This lowly one is willing to apologize to the Crown Princess. As he spoke, he scrambled to arbor, wailing miserably. Crown Princess, spare me, Crown Princess. This lowly one is just an insignificant nobody. I simply can't enter your noble eyes. Just now, this lowly one spoke rudely. This lowly one can slap my own mouth. I beg the Crown Princess to spare this lowly one's life. As he spoke, the young priest reached out and lightly patted his face. With a cowering and wretched appearance, he kowtowed several times in succession. Xiao Mu expressionlessly glanced at him, before abruptly kicking him several feet away. Scram further away. Crying so ugly, you still want to gain sympathy? Kill him. This person was really hateful, hiding in the crowd, repeatedly saying things to incite the crowd's disgust. While he himself hid in the crowd and didn't show his face, A complete villain's behavior, incomparably disgusting. If he didn't kill him now, was he going to wait until the new year? Everyone, my crown princess. You're going against the heavens. His Highness the Crown Prince said. I don't like him, beat him. Their Crown Princess said. Crying so ugly, kill him. The two of you are indeed a perfect match. Both of them were equally capricious and reckless. And their actions were both so hot that it was beyond one's expectations. The young priest was scared stiff. When he saw the Greenwood Guard come forward with a sword in hand, his whole body exploded with a frenzied rage, and he suddenly rushed towards Arbor. Demonis, I'll kill you. Halfway through his words, he was struck in the chest by a sword. What do you have to fight with her? You. Do you think you're worthy? Prince Mo's eyes were cold as he pulled out his sword. His eyes were cold as he watched the man fall to the ground, no longer breathing. He took a step forward and tightly grasped Arbor's slightly cold hand. A fierce look flashed across his eyes as he said coldly, Everyone look clearly. This is the consequence of slandering, and slandering my crown princess. Drag him away. Hang this person on the city gate tower. Flog the corpse for 3 days and 3 nights. Grind the bones and scatter the ashes. And don't let them enter the coffin. Pass down the imperial edict and warn everyone. If there are any more slanderers, their entire families will be executed. No one will be spared. Prince Mo's cold and deep voice reverberated through Changle Street, causing the Greenwood Guard to bow his head. The entire city's citizens prostrated themselves on the ground in fear. Your Highness the Crown Prince, please calm down. Your Highness the Crown Prince, please calm down. Although the little girl was expressionless on the surface, her heart was definitely cold. Even a pair of small hands could be this cold. Emolien's heart ached, and he tightly held her small hands. It's him, it's all his fault. She encountered such a vexing matter as soon as she entered the capital. He was furious, and layers of killing intent flashed in the depths of his eyes. Chapter 25:10. When Hu Dequan saw the Crown Prince's current state, alarm bells went off in his heart, and he thought to himself, this is bad. He had seen this kind of expression many times on the Emperor's face. It had to be said that the father and son were really like each other. Some of their subtle movements and expressions when they were angry were almost exactly the same. Naturally, he could not kill all the people of the Sun Moon Temple. The Crown Prince could punish them or kill some of them. It did not matter. After all, they had really slandered the Crown Princess. Could the Crown Prince not be angry? But if he killed all of them, then even if he was in the right, it would become unreasonable. After all, the Sun Moon Temple had come to Dragon Flame City to preach in the name of developing believers. Before this, they had naturally signed some treaties with the Emperor and made some concessions, which had benefited the people of the Divine Prefecture. But now, if the Holy Nun and the others were all killed as soon as they entered the capital, the Sun Moon Temple could use this as an excuse to make trouble. The temple's power was so great that it spread all over the 3 states. Although the Divine Prefecture was not afraid of them, if they really fought, it would really be a headache. Eunuch Hu was so anxious that he scratched his ears and cheeks. He cupped his fists and secretly bowed to Arbor, begging her to persuade the Crown Prince. Arbor glanced at him and gently tugged at Emolien's hand. Let me handle it, okay? Okay. Crown Prince Emo naturally wanted to do everything possible. If he could make Xiaoqiao's mood improve, he would do anything she wanted him to do. Arbor took a few steps forward and looked coldly at the Holy Nun, who was prostrating on the ground. The Holy Nun's hair was disheveled and her face was red. She did not look like the Snow Mountain goddess from before. Now, she was so miserable that she looked like a beggar on the side of the road, prostrating herself in front of a high and mighty girl. Her eyes were red with hatred, and her fingernails dug into her palms. Did Tianyan ask you to do it? It doesn't seem like it. Tianyan's style of doing things should not be so reckless. After several dealings, Tianyan had always given her the impression that he would plan before acting. It was very difficult for him to do such a brainless thing. You did this on your own, didn't you? You think you can step on me? I didn't expect that the one who was really stepped on was you. Arbor looked at her coldly. If there's a chance, tell your master. I'm Arbor. I'm back. Come back, come back, come back. The saintess held her breath, and her entire body trembled uncontrollably. Everyone only felt that these 3 words, Crown Princess, seemed to be lingering in their hearts. With a lingering charm, she said calmly, "No one in this world can stop me from moving forward." "You can't, he can't." "Heavens, no way. Not even the gods and Buddhas." The little stoic was expressionless, and her chilly voice reverberated throughout Changle Avenue, striking directly at people's hearts. "I once told myself that I would return to the divine land no matter if it was my home or not. This day has come so quickly. I know that many of you are afraid, trembling in fear. But today, I'm going to tell you. It's useless. Whatever I, Arbor, want to do, no matter how difficult and dangerous the future is, no matter how long and rugged the road is, I will definitely do it. I'm back. All the people who tried to stop me, all the arrogant people, will pay the price in blood for what you have done." Chapter 25:11. The little stoic's tone was calm, and her every word resounded in everyone's hearts. Emolian really wanted to rush up and hug this little lady. He really couldn't bear to see her indifferent and contemptuous expression. He couldn't bear to see her erect a tall iron bastion and covered in thorns. He was used to seeing that lively little lady. He had clearly already pulled her out from under layers of ice and snow. This child in front of him was too heart-wrenching. He clenched his fists tightly, and his back stiffened and didn't move. However, he hated the Sun Moon Temple to the bone in his heart. On the other side, Mu Xingchen was also still in shock. This was his first time seeing the little stoic calm and angry. Her joy, anger, sorrow, and joy seemed to be completely buried under that expressionless stoic face in that instant. Before this, regardless of whether she was angry or happy, she had a different expression. Even when she roared at him, "Who is she to you?" her expression also fluctuated. But now Mu Xingchen only felt his heart sink, and there was some pain in the tip of his heart. What kind of torment and sorrow would create this kind of girl? He didn't know why, but right now, he only wanted to bring this child home, properly protect her, love her, and not let her suffer the slightest bit of harm. Everyone silently hung their heads. They really wanted to look up at that little lady who shone like starlight, but they didn't dare to look up or make a sound. However, a faint trace of guilt rose in many of their hearts. On what basis could they wantonly open their mouths and casually slander others like this, saying that others were the source of disaster? Such a malicious reputation was pinned on a little lady who wasn't even 16 yet. Did this kind of temple really represent light and justice? Could it be that they didn't know what kind of harm this kind of accusation would cause to a person? They knew, but they still did it in the name of the 5 elements. If it weren't for the fact that the crown princess was powerful, wouldn't she have been slandered to death by them? Wouldn't she have suffered the condemnation and reviling of tens of thousands the moment she set foot in the capital? Shouldn't the crown princess retaliate? She deserved it. Shouldn't the crown princess fly into a rage? She deserved it. Shouldn't the crown princess send those who slandered her to hell? The commoners lowered their heads and felt that their hearts were heavy. It was unbearable. Doesn't the Sun Moon Temple represent the gods? Arbor raised his hand coldly. 5 thunder spirit talismans jumped on his fingertips, flashing with a faint blue light. Since you're a god's disciple, you're blessed by the heavens. Naturally, you're not afraid of heavenly punishment. Arbor stared coldly at the holy nun who was prostrating at her feet. Hu Dequan opened his mouth. He wanted to cry but had no tears. He had a feeling that what the crown princess was going to do next would be extremely frightening. He was wrong. He shouldn't have begged the little crown princess to plead with the crown prince. The little crown princess's heart was not any softer than the crown prince's. "You, what are you doing?" the saintess angrily shouted. She was also shocked. She raised her head to look at the talisman flowing between the little girl's fingers, and a faint trace of fear appeared in her eyes. At least until just now, she was still very certain that the crown prince and his people wouldn't dare to kill her. But now, when she saw the young crown prince consort's inhumane gaze, she suddenly felt a bit uncertain. She was afraid. Her voice trembled as she stepped back. "You don't act recklessly." Chapter 25:12. Are our Sun Moon Temple's forces in the 3 provinces? No, it's not like what you see. Oui, scared? The little girl asked aloofly. Her eyes coldly stared at the beggar like holy nun. What are you scared of? Aren't you God's emissary? Heaven will take care of you. Arbor said expressionlessly, and the lightning spirit talisman between his fingers suddenly leaped into the air. Don't worry, you will be with heaven. We will definitely endure heaven's punishment. Because you are God's emissaries, heaven's beloved children, the little stoic said with a smirk. Mu Jingrui shuddered when he saw this. He kept feeling that his little niece had intentions of developing in the direction of a pervert. Her gaze and tone were so calm that it made one's hair stand on end. Ah, don't. The holy nun shrieked while trembling all over. Boom! A bolt of spirit lightning struck the crowd and immediately exploded, causing several people to vomit blood and faint. The temple's people were instantly thrown into chaos. No one cared about each other anymore. Who didn't freaking want to save their lives? They all fled in all directions. Kill whoever dares to run, the crown prince said coldly. The arrows hit the fleeing temple's people one after another, and the flurry of arrows forced the temple's people back into the center of the circle as expected. Not a single arrow landed on the commoners. Although the commoners were scared half to death, they quickly discovered that the Purple Forest Guard's archery skills were very valiant, and their hearts calmed down slightly. They didn't dare to move or speak. They only dared to lie down like this, not even daring to breathe heavily. Arbor said coldly, Don't worry. After the 9 bolts of spirit lightning, I will let you off regardless of whether you die or not. After all, even heavenly law wants to spare your lives. I, Arbor, naturally have to give face to it. After the little stoic said this coldly, she walked to the side and looked at the people who were struck by the spirit lightning. Hu Dequan had long been so scared that his head was drenched in cold sweat. When the cold wind blew, he only felt his sweat sticking to his clothes and shivering from the cold. The crown princess wanted them dead. The crown princess wanted everyone from the Temple of Light dead. These 2 edicts entered Hu Dequan's mind, causing him to tremble all over. He secretly glanced at the crown princess. He still didn't understand this young crown prince consort. All those who tried to hurt her and wanted her to die a horrible death would suffer her wrath. The crown princess would seek revenge on the spot. There was simply no room for them to breathe. Hu Dequan's pupils shrank as he watched the weak ants struggling under the bombardment of the spiritual thunder. Naturally, he would report everything he saw today to the Great Emperor. Of course, he would report everything to the Great Emperor with respect and reverence. Presumably, the Great Emperor would also begin to value this person's existence. Was this really the crown princess, who had a low cultivation and family background, and was hard to be recognized by the Great Emperor? The crown princess, who stirred up a storm as soon as she entered the capital, didn't know that this old eunuch by the Great Emperor's side had developed a deep reverence for her, and didn't dare to harbor any other intentions. As for Fong Su, who had long steadied his stance, he heaved a sigh of relief and patted his chest heavily. Thank goodness, I chose my side quickly and steadily. I really have to say, I'm wise. I knew that those who opposed this black-hearted couple wouldn't have a good ending. Chapter 25:13. Boom 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 boom. 5 lightning spirit talismans, each with 9 bolts of lightning, struck down at the same time. The sound of rolling and wailing on the field, under the lightning spirit talismans, continued for a long time. These 5 lightning spirit talismans finally eliminated nearly 200 temple guards, and that group of priests who were full of nonsense also met with great misfortune. The remaining people, more or less, were struck by lightning, each of them holding their broken limbs, rolling and howling. The holy nun was the person who was heavily favored by the lightning spirit talismans. At this time, after the lightning strike, her whole body was like a piece of dead wood, stiff on the ground, not moving at all. Arbor swept a glance at her. Seeing that she was on the verge of death, her gaze indifferently moved away from her body. Turning around, her brows indifferently looked in front, and her calm voice coldly said, "Let's go." Hu Dequan trembled as he took 2 steps to the side, his head hung low. Mo Lien rushed forward 2 steps, and tightly grasped her ice-cold, bone-chilling little hand. Arbor's eyes were slightly bitter. Looking up at the man in front of her, the corner of her mouth drew a cold arc, forcing herself to let out a somewhat angry smile. Emolienne's heart trembled, suddenly ignoring everything. She stretched out her arms and pulled her into her embrace. Her slightly trembling hand gently stroked her little head. If I don't kill others, others will kill me. If I don't resist, I will be like a withered lamb floating in the world, swallowed by the thick black fog bite by bite. But I don't want it to be like this. I just want to live well. Work hard to live. More actively than anyone else to live. Even like this, it's not allowed. Emolienne, this is probably my life. They continued to resist, and they continued to kill. Fight, fight, fight. Fight until the last moment of her life. No. Emolienne understood this little fellow's current state of mind too well. Every time she killed someone, she would fall into a deep self-loathing mood. She obviously didn't want to kill people, but in this world, there was always a group of people who didn't want her to live well. These people, what did they have to do with her? Did they know her? He didn't know him at all. What kind of enmity and hatred could motivate these people to make her bear the heavy crime of being a sinner for all eternity? If she was powerless to resist and turn the tables today, if this accusation were to spread across the entire divine land, what would the result be? Would she have a good ending? She just wanted to live a beautiful life with her lotus. Who was it to do anything to her? She did not want to become a little monster with thorns all over her body that would stab anyone she saw. But there was nothing at all. Why did they refuse to let her go? She did not want to be sick, but she was always forced to be sick. Since that was the case, she would fight to the death. If one came, she would kill one. If 10 came, she would kill 10. If anyone wanted to make life difficult for her, she would make life difficult for them, her entire family. Even if the entire world is your enemy, I will still be with you. Even if I have to give up the entire world, I am willing to do so. What does all living things have to do with me? I won't let go. I'm holding on to you, and I swear I won't let go in this lifetime. Emolienne tightly grasped her small hand, looking deeply at her with an abnormally resolute gaze. The little girl's tense emotions finally relaxed. Because of the warmth that poured into her heart, because of her lotus. She burrowed her head into his embrace, and acted like a spoiled child in his embrace. The little stoic face finally crumbled, and was replaced by soft sobs that also broke his heart. Chapter 25:15. Then your majesty, please give this subject brother a piece of land, and let this subject brother take his family and return to his hometown. Sob, 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 sob. The old king of Jianpain was sobbing. The divine prefecture emperor was a little embarrassed. Naturally, he already knew that his son had beaten up the eldest son of the king of Jianpain, Emo Zhuang. Now that the king of Jianpain was crying in front of him, he couldn't pretend to be deaf and mute. Cough. The divine prefecture emperor coughed lightly. This child Emolienne is indeed a little insensible. But he just came back from a long journey. Perhaps he's not in a good mood. King of Jianpain, don't lower yourself to his level. The king of Jianpain was instantly a little angry. Your majesty, it's the crown prince who won't let my Zhuang off. Moreover, putting aside the matter of Zhuang, my youngest son Emokuan, was also beaten up by His Highness the Crown Prince in Shentian Prefecture. Your Majesty, I really want to ask, what kind of grudge does the Crown Prince have with his biological uncle? Why does he like to beat up my son whenever he sees him? The Divine Prefecture Emperor. Your Majesty, you must seek justice for this subject brother. The King of Jianpain was sobbing as he sat on the ground and wiped his tears sadly. The Divine Prefecture Emperor's head hurt terribly. He flicked his sleeves and called, Hu Duquan. Eunuch who immediately trotted into the imperial study and bowed respectfully. Your Majesty, go to the Eastern Palace and invite the Crown Prince over. Hu Duquan. At this time, the sky was already dark. If he went to the Eastern Palace to invite His Highness the Crown Prince, would he be beaten out of there? The Divine Prefecture Emperor saw Hu Duquan standing there in a daze and couldn't help but say angrily, Why aren't you going? Eunuch Hu shuddered and hurriedly agreed. He didn't dare to hesitate, and used his spirit energy to fly all the way to the Eastern Palace. Today Emolien and Arbor had just moved in, and the entire Eastern Palace was still busy. The master of the palace had not returned for more than 10 years. Although the Eastern Palace was cleaned every day, it still lacked the aura of a master. Now that their master had finally returned, and brought the Crown Prince Consort with him, the Eastern Palace suddenly had 2 masters living in it. Just arranging the manpower to tidy up the Crown Prince Consorts and Crown Prince Consort's sleeping quarters made everyone extremely busy. When Hu Duquan walked in, the entire Eastern Palace was still brightly lit. Zhao Tengdong, who was in charge of the internal affairs of the Eastern Palace, was still busy shouting with his bulging belly. Aunt Jing stood to the side with a solemn and dignified expression, occasionally exchanging a few words with the little palace maids who came to report. When the 2 of them saw Hu Duquan running in, they were slightly stunned. Zhao Tengdong stepped forward and said with a smile, "Eunuch Hu, what's the matter? Go, go, go. What could I possibly want from you? Quick, go and invite His Highness. His Majesty has summoned him." Zhao Tengdong hurriedly asked, "What happened? Why did the great emperor summon me?" Hu Duquan wanted to be on good terms with the crown prince, so he quickly said in a low voice, "The Duke of Jianpain has complained to the great emperor." "Your Highness." Zhao Tengdong walked to the door of the sleeping quarters and bowed. "The great emperor has summoned you. Hu Duquan, go back and tell him that as long as he doesn't acknowledge me as his wife, I don't want to see him for even a day." Scram. Hu Duquan, what should he do? If the old great king of the Mo Kingdom's personal eunuch, Gong Chang'an, was here, he would definitely laugh at him and pat him on the shoulder. He would say sympathetically, "It's not like our crown prince has only been willful for a day or 2. Just bear with it." Chapter 25:16. This servant is Kaixiu. Kaichi. Greetings to the crown princess. 2 delicate palace maids around the age of 18 or 19 bowed to Arbor, their attitudes extremely respectful. The young crown princess was currently drooping her small head, listlessly half lying on the red jade brocade couch. The crown prince was currently sitting by her side. Ever since they'd just returned, they'd heard His Highness the Crown Prince continuously teasing and talking to her. One moment, he'd give her this food, and the next moment, he'd use that food to coax her. This treasure was extremely rare. The way their masters interacted with each other made the 2 palace maids feel a bit surprised. For some reason, they felt as if their roles had been switched. Why was it His Highness the Crown Prince who was rushing to coax this young crown princess? This was because in their 3 continents, the existence of women was definitely weaker than men. This kind of situation would be even more vivid among cultivators. There was no other reason. On the divine continent, male cultivators were generally stronger than female cultivators. Even the heavens were 100 times harsher towards female cultivators than male cultivators. When cultivators broke through the final checkpoint of the spirit realm and ascended to the deity realm, the success rate of female cultivators in the 5 spirits reincarnation trial was only 1% of male cultivators. This established the irreversible supreme status of male cultivators in the 3 continents. Unless it was a few noble ladies from large aristocratic families or women at the peak of power, when they ascended to the spirit realm, they could rely on all kinds of magic treasures, spirit artifacts, or divine artifacts that their families found to maximize their own ascension rate. If it was an ordinary female rogue cultivator, or a woman from a small family, then sorry, these people would face thousands of dangers in their advancement. If they were not careful, they would probably end up with their bodies and souls destroyed. As a result, in the divine continent, female cultivators who could reach the deity realm were extremely rare compared to men. Many female cultivators, because they cherished their lives, would forever stop at the peak of the 15th level of Great Spirit Master Realm. There were also quite a few people who existed. Because of this fear, a trace of a crack appeared in their hearts of cultivation. As they grew older, this feeling of not daring would spread throughout their entire bloodline. In the end, this group of people would sink into depression, never daring to take even half a step forward. Many women from small clans, if their talents were not bad, would be taken away by their clans to exchange for some resources and provide them to male cultivators as cultivation furnaces. They had no right to refuse. The family groomed you, and now they want to use you. What right do you have to refuse? This was the sorrow of the women of the small forces in the upper 3 continents. Therefore, it was already a very lucky thing for weak girls like Kai Xiao and Kai Chi to be sent to the imperial palace by their families and obtain a lifetime of peace. As long as the 2 of them served their masters well in the palace, worked hard to maintain a correct attitude, and did not make any mistakes, then the 2 of them would be able to survive until they left the palace. They would receive a sum of severance pay from the palace, and when they returned to their hometown, they would be able to buy a few mu of land and hire a long-term worker to farm. There was an 80% chance that they would be able to live out their remaining years in comfort. As for Kai Xiao and Kai Chi, they were both extremely dutiful and honest palace maids. Ever since they entered the door, the 2 of them did not dare to look around. They only respectfully saluted and stood to the side. When Arbor heard the sound, his eyelids only slightly lifted. He then waved his hand and said, "You may leave." Kai Chi and Kai Xiao glanced at each other. They did not understand their master's intentions, but they also did not dare to make wild guesses. They hurriedly lowered their bodies and slowly retreated out of the door. Chapter 25:18. The little fellow's short-circuited brain was somewhat connected. Kai Xiao. She seemed to have heard this name yesterday, but when the other people introduced themselves, she was not in a good mood and was too lazy to respond to them. You 2 are palace maids from the Eastern Palace, right? Yes. Saishio slightly breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly said respectfully, "This servant and Saichi were assigned by Aunt Jing to serve the Crown Princess's daily life as personal palace maids. If the Crown Princess feels that us 2 are not enough, or if you have any other requests, you can directly tell Aunt Jing." At that time, "Oh, there's no need." Arbor waved her little wrist. She was not a particular person. 2 palace maids were already too much to serve her, so why would she ask for more people? Yes. Kai Xiao breathed a sigh of relief again. She was actually quite afraid that this little crown princess would look down on them and casually ask them to scram. In any case, there were plenty of palace maids in the imperial palace. Even if the crown princess did not like this batch, with her status, she could recruit another batch of palace maids at any time. There were plenty of various small families and aristocratic families who racked their brains to send their daughters into the imperial palace. Kai Xiao's temperament was calm, and her words were dull. She was very afraid that her master would not like her. But looking at the current situation, she was afraid that she had already passed the first hurdle. Kai Chi's temperament was more lively. Seeing this, she hurriedly said with a smile, "Crown Princess, let us servants serve you to wash up." Arbor blinked. "Where's my husband?" Kai Chi hurriedly lowered her head respectfully and said, "You must be talking about His Highness the Crown Prince. His Highness went to the study early in the morning. Several old officials came to pay a visit to His Highness." "Oh." Arbor nodded her little head. She lifted the soft quilt and jumped down from the bed. The 2 hurriedly stepped forward and let the little crown princess wash up and change her clothes. However, the little crown princess didn't need their help. She did everything on her own. Seeing this, the 2 girls heaved a sigh of relief. They were afraid that their master would be fussy and difficult to serve. However, from the looks of it, although the little crown princess's personality was a bit cold, and she didn't speak much, she was very kind to the 2 servants and didn't put on any airs of a master. "Crown Princess, what kind of hairstyle do you like? Let's do it in a simple and relaxed way." The young crown prince consort sat in front of the dressing mirror. Her small, jade-like face seemed to be shrouded in a layer of pearl light. Her skin looked both delicate and fair, truly an indescribably beautiful sight. The 2 palace maids both inwardly inhaled. No wonder His Highness liked this crown prince consort so much. She was truly too beautiful. In the entire upper 3 provinces, it would be difficult to find another girl who could be compared to the little crown princess. After thinking for a while, Kai Chi tied the little crown princess' hair into a cloud bun. Her technique was very skillful. Moreover, it wasn't the cloud bun that followed the trend. She made some small improvements to this bun. Because the little crown princess was too young, her long hair looked a bit old-fashioned when she tied it up. Kai Chi's modified bun made the 2 strands of black hair by her temples into 2 small braids that hung over her shoulders. This made the little fairy in the mirror look more lively and playful. Finally, she inserted the heavenly phoenix purple jade hairpin that the young crown prince consort had chosen, and put on a pair of light purple beaded flowers on both sides of the hairpin. This way, a charming little beauty stood gracefully in the mirror. Kai Chi's dressing speed was very fast. Chapter 25:19. Seeing her expressionless face, Kai Chi's heart pounded. She braced herself and asked, "Crown Princess, do we need to change it again?" There's no need to change it." "Very good," the little crown princess said with a stoic face. Kai Chi heaved a huge sigh of relief. She walked to the dozen or so large chests in the corner of the room and said, "Crown Princess, these clothes and accessories were just sent over from the production room and the treasure room last night. Your servant hasn't had time to take care of them yet. There's also some furniture that will be sent over from the production room in the next 2 days." "Crown Princess, what do you want to wear today?" Kai Chi asked tentatively. The little crown princess waved her small hand. "Anything is fine. Something simple will do." Kai Chi finally understood what was going on. It seems that our little crown princess likes to start simple. She doesn't want to do anything too complicated in the future. Arbor thought for a moment and said, "I want to wear red today." She wants to wear a fiery red battlesuit. I'll kill whoever dares to cause trouble." "Yes, Crown Princess." It's good that the Crown Princess is willing to state her request. Kai Chi quickly rummaged through the chests and found a dress made of red ostrich feathers and a white rabbit fur cloak. The red was like fire, and the white was pure. At first glance, the 2 palace maids were dazzled. Heavens, who wouldn't like such a quick-witted and adorable young crown prince consort? "Crown Princess, the meal is ready. Please come this way." Sir Jojo followed the 2 palace maids out of the bedroom and went to the side hall to eat. Along the way, the palace maids and eunuchs they met all bowed their heads respectfully. They didn't dare to look around recklessly. Sir Jojo was somewhat satisfied. It seems that the management of the Eastern Palace is good in general. At the very least, Auntie Jing and Eunuch Zhao should be able to suppress these people with their authority. As long as they did not bother Jojo-sama would not care too much about them. "Greetings, Crown Princess." "Greetings, Crown Princess." Along the way, people bowed and saluted. Arbor just glanced at them and entered the side hall under the guidance of Kai Chi and Kai Xiao. The 2 round tables were already filled with food. Xiaomu found a seat and sat down. She furrowed her brows as she looked at the dozens of sumptuous snacks and side dishes on the table. "Who sent it?" the little crown princess asked calmly with an expressionless face. If Feng Su and Eunuch who were here, their hearts would definitely skip a beat, and they would cry out in alarm. The calmer this little crown princess was, the more expressionless her face was, the more restless her heart was. Kai Chi didn't know what was going on, so she bowed and said, "It was Eunuch Li from the kitchen. He brought a few palace maids with him." The crown princess nodded. "Call them over." Kai Xiao's heart skipped a beat. She smelled a trace of something unusual. Without waiting for Kai Chi to speak, Kai Xiao quickly bowed and said, "Yes." Then she quickly walked out of the door and whispered a few words to the 2 palace maids guarding the door. When she walked into the side hall again, she saw the little crown princess sitting at the table. She didn't even touch her chopsticks. Although she was expressionless, it felt like the pressure on her body had dropped a few notches. The 2 palace maids lowered their heads obediently and didn't dare to speak. They just stood behind the little crown princess. After a quarter of an hour, the palace maids outside the door came in to report that Eunuch Li from the kitchen had brought people over.